Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of Universal City, Texas. It is Tuesday, August 15th, 2023. I'll call this meeting now to order at 6:32 p.m. and call for quorum check, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Buck.
Here.
Councilmember Bowman.
Here.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Here.
Councilmember Najarian.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Quorum is present. We shall proceed. The invocation this evening will be given by Councilwoman Bowman. I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards. So would you all please stand?
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you for your love and gifts given to us day by day. We praise you for the gifts of creation and the work we are called to do. We thank you for having able hands and minds, for the opportunity to plan and design, to give service and conserve, to care for others, to make our community a better place. We thank you for giving us special gifts and responsibilities, for enabling us to stand upright and make choices, and for presenting us with opportunities to promote justice and truth. We thank you for your protection of our city and our residents. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Ooh, I think we're working now. I have a laptop that hiccups quite a bit. So it looks like it's all fixed. So there you go. Okay, let's move on now to then our special meeting this evening. We've got quite a few items on the agenda. I'm going to move a few things around that I'll discuss with you in a minute. But the first item I would like to specifically go on is tab number A, to consider the minutes of the Tuesday, August 1st, 2023 regular meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion made by Councilmember Najarian, second by Councilmember Fitzpatrick. Discussion, anyone? There's one slight change. It's on under item number B, a statement by Ms. Pittman, that the responsibility falls under the bank through the bank depository. There was a misspelled word there, so it's word depository, so that's the only change. All right, motion and a second. Any discussion further? All right, call for the vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman. Aye. Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. It's 103 degrees, I remember, everybody. It's nice and cool in here. Okay, next item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. And you can tell that it is an opportunity for citizens to address council on issues or concerns. Must be informative only. We do not have any specific council discussion or action to be taken. And I ask you to please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We have a pretty full meeting this evening. So first individual signed up this evening is Tammy Banks. Banks?
Tammy Banks, my address is 529 Display, Universal City, Texas. Mayor, council members, I just want to let y'all know, on 1604 Frontage Road, there, at the exit before Bird Avenue. At the exit before Bird Avenue, at the separation for the exit and the traffic coming around from 1604 and Gibbsboro Road. People are stopping in that division, the divider, wanting to turn onto Bird Road. And I saw it at least 3 or 4 times since Sunday, people doing that. And today I saw a car almost hit by 4 or 5 cars trying to get over into that other lane right there. I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but I just wanted y'all to know about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that comment very much. Thank you very much. Okay, next individual this evening is Melissa Cox, Carrillo Cox.
Hello, good evening, Mayor and council members. I am here today representing the Texas Tri-County Chamber. I proudly serve as interim chair, and first and foremost, want to express our gratitude for you being a partner to the Texas Tri-County Chamber in ensuring that the businesses in the area continue to be prosperous, and that way we can partner and support them any way that we can. And additionally, I also wanted to present just a couple of upcoming events for you to be aware of, and we would love to see you there if your schedules allow. August 24th at 5:30 p.m. is our member mixer at the Brontex Theater in New Braunfels, and this is a free attendance for anybody who is willing to come on by. September 12th at 11:30 a.m. is our monthly luncheon at the Hilton Garden Inn in the city of Live Oak. We will be celebrating the Air Force's birthday, and we'll have a briefing from JBSA Randolph. There will also be vendor tables there. On October 19th, we are having our first ever Glow Golf Tournament at Olympia Hills. So look for more information on sponsorship on our website. We look forward to seeing you there and possibly having you have a team come out and play. This will be a first one for us, so it should be exciting. On November 15th, please save the date for our elected officials reception. Invitations will go out this week, and all elected officials are invited to attend at no cost. The evening includes food and drinks, and we will provide more information for an opportunity to sponsor as well. If you don't know our fabulous executive director, her name is Mindy Paxton, and she is always readily available to answer any questions or concerns you may have. Her phone number is 210-658-8322, or by email director@txtricountychamber.org. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to also add that Melissa, in her full-time job, works for CPS Energy and has been a very strong supporter and advocate for suburban communities. So thank you very much for what you do, and congratulations on your job. I know you'll have a wonderful time. Thanks for coming, Melissa. Okay, next individual assigned this evening is Mr. Bernie Rubal.
I know you're wondering. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Bernie Rubel, 635 Balboa Drive, Universal City. A couple small things before the budget issues come up, which I hope to also present. One is with regard to fence repair. I read the diatribe that had occurred in council. Let's have council give our city people just some uniform direction. May I suggest no change in the city fence construction standards, no fee, no permit for repair of existing fence with in-kind replacement. That seems very straightforward. And it would be fair. It would be fair across the board. It would also relieve the inspection people of going out and doing kind of ridiculous checks on some fences. And number two is a little bit for later, but also for now. Okay, if council would, just in your mind, take a deep breath in and blow it out. Okay, a deep breath in and blow it out. Okay, very good, very good. We're all breathing, we're all systems. We have cells in our body. The cells in our body are equivalent to the houses and the people within them. Essentially, they need blood flow to them. They need to get waste from them, okay? And so our city is like that. Our city is like a body, a living body, okay? But one of the things I've noticed is that when we look at what's needed for the city, what's needed for the cells, and compare it to what the cost is for the city, for the cells, it's out of proportion. Okay, so I have a little demonstration for you. Okay, when you take a breath in and blow it out, you still have a little bit of a reserve. You can breathe in higher than your inspiratory volume. You can blow out more than your inspiratory volume. But look what happens whenever you breathe into a tube. Okay, so we all know the John Wayne movies, and here's the tube. And this is approximately equal to the volume of my normal tidal volume, the normal breath rate, my normal breath rate. So I'm going to take a breath in and blow it out. How much air got into my lungs to get to the cells? The answer is 0. because what I put in was here in the tube. What I blew out was here in the tube. So essentially my lung volume in and out is right there. Okay, so far so good. Now what happens whenever taxes and development occurs in excess of what the cells need? Council adds more and more length to this hose. Clinically, this hose length is called dead space. It does no one any good, okay? So I just ask council to be considered in their deliberations with regard to tax increases, and also just funding new projects where the cells are being starved of oxygen. The cells are having problem getting nutrients through the roads to the little houses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Very interesting. Thank you. Anyone else want to address council on, that didn't get a chance to sign up this evening?
Well, I can't say anything about the court, correct?
Excuse me?
You can't say anything about the court, correct? You can speak about the court. She has a pending case.
Yes, you can speak about the courts. We can't reply back to you, but you certainly have a chance to give us your name and address for the record, ma'am.
My name is Wendy Terrio. I'm a provider that works here in Universal City. So I come to Universal City. I don't live in Universal City. But what I've noticed about Universal City is y'all have a lot of police officers, which is great, right? You're trying to keep your city safe, correct? But I have a problem with your court administrator, and then also your Judge Stubblefield, I think that's his name. And you have mostly volunteers that are giving out information on court dates, which is kind of scary because a lot of them, they don't really know what they're doing, and they're giving out wrong information. And I had a warrant for my arrest because the judge wouldn't talk to me, Judge Stubblefield, and then the two ladies sitting here were the only other people in the court besides the police officer, both volunteers, giving me a piece of paper and telling me that she didn't tell me I had to wait, so I left. And so I am going to ask for a jury trial, and I've actually talked to a lawyer outside of the city, and he says there is an issue with the city. But to me, I've never been in a court, and I'm 43, I've been in courts before. I've never been in a court where you don't have a prosecutor here. I've never been in a court where you have volunteers, like 12 of them, giving out information, and a lot of it's wrong. And I have some of it recorded. So it's kind of scary. The other thing is if you're giving out a lot of tickets, that's fine, but you need a congruency of people that can assist with all those tickets, and you don't have that at all. And if you look at the reviews on your official website, you'd be surprised at what people are saying. And that's fine, we get tickets. I don't know if y'all get tickets. I wonder if y'all even get off easily here, but the police are everywhere here, and you can't hardly cough without being pulled over here. That wasn't the issue. The reason I got the ticket, I was fine with that. I was on my phone talking to my mom. I was fine with that. It was when I came to the court, I realized the incompetency of the court and the fact that I had to keep coming back because I was given wrong information. Ms. Watkins wasn't looking at, I guess, addressing voicemails. She told me they had 200, like that was my problem. I'm like, well, that means you have a lot of tickets. So you need to address the fact that you don't have people working for all those tickets that you're giving out. So that's not my problem. But given the wrong information and having to take off work, and I have clients having to take off multiple days to come back here to actually not even be able to talk to the judge, Judge Stubblefield, I don't know. The second judge, she was doing so many things that he wasn't doing. So there was an incongruency in the two judges, like extreme. And I realized, why couldn't he have done what you did? If he had done what you did, I wouldn't have had to come back twice. I wouldn't have had a warrant for my arrest after I already paid the electronic fee. So it was a mess. So I spoke to an attorney outside of here, and he told me to go ahead and ask for a jury trial probably and bring it to their attention. I'm going to be calling Judge Stubblefield as a witness, actually. I'm going to be talking to him about what he said. I'm actually going to be pulling the audio from the court. So I'm just concerned in the fact the way that this city is run. To me, at the least, it's incompetent. At the most, it's corrupt. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Okay, let's press on. We're going to have a slight change in the business this evening. I'm going to move some of the public hearings, not the public hearings about the budget and the tax rate, but the public hearings on the planned use developments, I'm going to move those up, and then we'll get on with the rest of the business, because I think that's the best way for us to proceed this evening. So if you go to where there says no tabs on 4, 5, and 6, and there are 4 has a tab G after it, 5 has, and 6, and there's a tab H. The applicant has requested the city postpone consideration on the items until the next meeting on September the 5th. At that time, we'll conduct the notice public hearing and allow all of those who have come today to speak, and I don't think anybody has signed up that I know of. We will then table the public hearing tab items until the next meeting. So that's what I have right now. So this would be, I would go down to tab number 4 now, and we would officially open up this public hearing. And I'll let staff make some comments, and I'll open up the public hearing. We'll conduct it accordingly, but we'll take it from there as we complete. You understand where we are?
Well, you use numbers, but the tabs are done by letters, so.
Okay, tab number 4, public, that's the tab we're going to do now, tab number 4. No, it's no tab number 4, excuse me, no tab number 4 on the item. Okay, there's no tab 1, F, no tab 2, tab 3, this is no tab 4. Okay.
School, they're just not presenting.
Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Do you understand what we're doing? Okay, good. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. The Planning and Zoning Commission did hear this case. I'll let Michael give a real short background on their decision, and then we'll let you.
Okay.
As Ms. Mayor mentioned, last Monday, August 7th, Planning and Zoning did conduct a public hearing.
Couldn't hear you very well.
Okay, I'll say that again. So on August 7th, Planning and Zoning Commission did hear or have a public hearing for the 3 requests, and they did approve or make a recommendation of approval to City Council 9-0. Since that time, the applicant has requested that we table this until the next City Council meeting, September 5th. They are working out a few items with the landlord, and so they'd like to have that all nailed down before they come to you.
Okay. But we still, by the way it's set up, we still need to conduct the public hearing and get some comments. And if not, then I can go ahead and table this until the next meeting. Okay, it is now 6:50, so let me open the public hearing, and it's related to PC 585, ZC 247. It's a request for an amendment to the future land use plan from R Retail to NS Neighborhood Services for an approximately 5-acre tract located at 1922 Pat Booker Road / 2103 Universal City Boulevard, Universal City Square subdivision for zoning ordinance 581. So I'll open up that public hearing. Would anyone like to address council on that particular issue? Are you aware it's basically right down the street from here? Okay. All right, no one wants to discuss. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing then at 6:51. And now the question is, do I need to go back to tab G and then the tabs 5 and 6, or can we just table everything related to this particular thing? Because one's the flop first, and then there's the zone change.
But he's asking, he just did tab 4, he has to do tab 5 and 6 separately.
In the essence of time, are we able to do that?
Yeah, do tab G and then go ahead and table it, and then quick do your public hearings for tab 5 and 6. And then you can table tab H as well.
Okay, so let me open up tab G for discussion by council then, to consider that ordinance at 1922 Pat Booker Road, changing it from R Retail to NS Neighborhood Services, providing for severability and establishing an effective date. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Buck.
Mr. Mayor, move to table this issue until the 5th of September at our next city council meeting. Does it require a motion?
Motion's been made. Do I have a second? I'm sorry, Mr. Vaughn, second. Any discussion by anybody? All right, let's call for that vote then, please.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman?
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye. Okay, that motion passes. We will move on then to tab 5 and 6. I do need to do those, and then we can go to address first. I'll open up a public hearing then on tab 5 That's public hearing 586, Z248, requesting for a zone change at that same property and per zoning ordinance 581. So I'll go open up the hearing at 6:56. Any discussion by anyone? You'd like to address us on that? Okay. This is the procedure we have to do. If it seems confusing to you, it's the way, because one's a future land use plan, one's a zoning ordinance. And so the reason we have to do them separately is because they're slightly different in the terminology. Okay, so I'll close it then at 6:55, and we'll go then to.
Mr. Mayor, point of
Yes.
order, sir, you opened it at 6:56.
Oh,
You can't close it at 6:55.
6:54, and I'll close it at 6:55, okay? I was never good at Roman numerals. I think everybody got it, right? Okay, all right, so.
Just want to make sure that everyone.
Okay, so let's move to the next public hearing, which is 587 ZC 249. This is for a PUD preliminary final plan at that same address per zoning ordinance 581. I'll open up that public hearing now at 6:56. Anyone want to address it on this particular one about the PUD? All right, 6:56 and 7, I'll close it, okay? I know it's confusing to you all, but that's the way we have to operate that way. Okay, so then we move on to tab H, which is discuss and to consider an ordinance 581, PUD 2023-104. And this is for that particular property again, providing for severability, providing for the publication of the caption for this ordinance and establishing an effective date. So, glad to enter an ordinance? Yes?
Mr. Mayor, move to table this issue until the 5 September next city council meeting, sir.
Okay, motion been made, second by Councilmember Vaughn. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Buck,
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby,
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman,
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick,
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. We'll move on right now. Okay, now we move to no tab number 7, and we will conduct a public hearing in a few minutes, but I'd like to see if staff has anything they want to present before we open the public hearing. This is it's related to a request for an amendment to the future land use plan from CS Commercial Services to general commercial for HDR, high-density residential, on approximately 12-acre tract located at 2280 Pat Booker Road, CB 5047, P30, and P113, ABS 777, per zoning ordinance 581.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike will give an update at what occurred at the planning and zoning meeting. We do have the applicants here. They have a presentation, and then we can go into our public hearings.
Okay, very good.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is regarding the property at 2280 Pat Booker Road. The applicant is CLX Ventures, and they are proposing a mixed-use PUD on a 12-acre vacant unsubdivided tract, which is located right behind Peppermill Apartments and behind the shopping center right here. Notice that in your packet that there are 2 lots in this proposed subdivision. One lot is about 9 acres, and that is for the proposed multifamily, the apartment complex. And the second lot, lot 2, is for the self-storage facility. Note that that property, or that lot, is located within the ACUs, which is why they changed their proposal to include self-storage, because that is a less intense use, and it is a permitted use by the Air Force for properties within the ACUs. So therefore, the applicant is requesting the following: a future land use plan, FLUP change from CS Commercial Services to GC General Commercial and HDR High Density Residential, a zone change from C3 Commercial Services to PUD 2023-104 District, and approval of a PUD preliminary and final plans in connection with the proposed PUD 2023-104 District. Please note that the preliminary plat of subdivision was included and it is included in your packet, and Plan Commission did make a did approve that on a vote of 9-0. That does not need to get reviewed and considered by council, however, it is part of the overall package. And they will have to come back at some point in the future, if they do move forward, to get the final plat approved by Planning and Zoning. Back in March of this year, we originally met with the applicant and worked with them on issues including use types, density, setbacks, access, architectural design, building materials, as well as the important buffering of the adjacent residential neighbors. In May of 2023, they did make a presentation before City Council for a concept plan. Project specifics, as I mentioned, Lot 1 is the apartment complex. It's approximately 9 acres, and they're proposing 192 units, which comes to about 22 units per acre. 373 parking spaces, which meets the underlying zoning code requirements. They're providing various amenities, including a clubhouse, a pool, and a dog park. And there's a exterior building material combination of stone and decorative CMU panels, I believe, as you see in your packet on the architectural elevations, it identifies that 30% of those materials are stone. Lot 2, the self-storage building, again, that's on a 3-acre lot approximately. It is in the ACUS zone. And on the plan, it shows 3 buildings, but based on a conversation at Planning and Zoning, they may be consolidating that into one multi-story building. They can address that further when they give their presentation. Other development regulations include 85% maximum impervious coverage for the overall property. We're not separating the 2 lots because there is a proposed detention pond that will provide for both lots 1 and 2. Decorative fencing fronting Pat Booker, as well as the Peppermill Apartments drive aisle that leads from Pat Booker back to that apartment complex. Shielded or downward lighting. We encourage them to try and reduce the foot candles as much as possible, especially adjacent to the existing residential. And so landscaping that's going to be provided, as well as the downward lighting, the shielded lighting, will help them achieve that as much as possible. Landscaping, 25% overall for Lot 1, 10% for Lot 2. Again, we did ask them to increase the landscaping adjacent to the existing single-family residential subdivision. Signs. So no pole signs are allowed per Exhibit D. So they're proposing 1 monument sign for the apartment complex. And the self-storage unit, 1 monument sign is allowed, but based on the configuration and the amount of space, I'm not sure if that makes sense for them to have one. They'll probably more likely have some wall signs that are larger. Traffic analysis. So we did have them conduct a traffic impact analysis, and they conducted the impact analysis for both lots, both uses combined. And the traffic impact, it's not expected, the developments are not expected to have a significant operational impact on the surrounding roadway system. They're anticipated to generate 83 AM peak hour trips and 104 PM peak hour trips. As I mentioned, this did go before Planning and Zoning back on August 7th. They did provide a recommendation of approval on a 9-0 vote. We sent out 36 legal notices. We did not receive any written responses or phone calls. However, there was 1 adjacent resident in the single-family subdivision that did come to the public hearing at Planning and Zoning and did express concern over the proposed development. As with other PUDs, the applicant is required to respond to the approval standards that are located within your packet, so they did provide responses to those. With that, the applicant is here to make a presentation as well, and we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Please.
Is there a clicker? Yeah. Make sure we have it turned on for you this time. There you go. Oh, yeah, it's on. I just felt it vibrate.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting us come before you again today. It's good to see you all. We're CLX Ventures, as Michael mentioned. I'm Thomas Hill. This is my colleague David Strauss. And we're proposing the rezoning of 2280 Pat Booker Road to use for a new apartment and self-storage development. First, we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves. Then we'll tell you why we believe this market will sustain these 2 product types. And then we'll give you a brief overview of the project. So the two main product types that CLX primarily develops are large industrial warehouses, you can see on the left, located in DFW airport area, and then the one on the right being the Granite Stone Creek Class A market rate apartment located in San Marcos. In the nearly decade and a half that CLX has been developing these two product types, we've delivered over 2,300 units of multifamily and over 9 million square feet of industrial space and have capitalized over $1.2 billion into these projects. We're primarily focused on the I-35 corridor of Texas, although we have developed in Houston as well. And so as you can see, we have projects currently active and also completed anywhere between San Antonio and Dallas. We're excited to be investing in the future of Universal City. Here's the contact info of everyone in CLX. Feel free to contact them at any time, but especially Dave and I, who will be the point persons for these projects. Please feel free to pick up the phone and call us or send us an email with any questions you may have. Here is the location of the site, situated on Pat Booker in between the Bahama Bucks, Peppermill Apartments, and Napa Auto Parts. So these are the two projects we're proposing. Firstly, Class A market rate apartments, similar to the Grand at Stone Creek, as you can see on the left here. And then also Class A climate controlled multi-story self-storage, similar to what you can see on the right here. And so we performed two demand analyses for these projects. First, let's focus on multifamily. We took the total renter population in this area and subtracted the current existing supply for multifamily units in addition to the proposed and also multifamily units under construction, which gave us a number of 871 units of net demand, and then our 192 units, in addition to White and Conley's recently approved, I think 264 or 271 units, still leaves over a 400 unit net demand on top of those. And then our self-storage market demand analysis, we looked at the 3-mile radius around our site and found that there is a little over 800,000 square feet net rentable demand space. And there's 12 facilities in that 3-mile radius, which equate to around 550,000 square feet of space, which is 6.8 square feet per capita. And of that 6.8 square feet, 2.8 square feet per capita is climate controlled. And so our net demand calculation brought us to a number 261,000 square feet. And we're proposing about 100,000 square feet, so that also leaves additional demand on top of our proposed self-storage space. Here's our preliminary working elevation for the apartment project, showing the amount and types of materials we're proposing. We did receive some comments from Planning and Zoning Committee that suggested perhaps we incorporate some aspects of Randolph Air Force Base into our project. And so we've already gotten with our architect and we're beginning to do sketches and to try and assimilate some textural and architectural design into our project as best as possible to honor the heritage of Universal City and long ties with Randolph Air Force Base. Here's our current landscape plan we're working with. As you all know, we have many wonderful trees on this site already, and so we are planning to engage Bartlett tree experts who we've worked with in the past to not only save as many of these trees as possible during construction, but then to preserve these trees for years to come. But we'll also be supplementing these trees, especially along the rear border that is adjacent to the single-family residences, as well as the demarcation line between the apartment and self-storage projects, as well as the Pat Booker frontage.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question during their
No,
presentation?
we have to go through the public hearing first, then we'll.
So
It's a procedural way we got to do it.
Sure. So here is some of the existing trees and also trees that will most likely have to be removed and that we're going to try and keep. This is the back rear edge of the property. As you can see, we have some trees along there, thankfully, but we will again be supplementing those. And then here's the border between the apartment self-storage project and also along the rear border with the single-family residences. We have a nice cluster of trees there that we will again be supplementing. And then along the frontage of Pat Booker, we do have some nice cluster of trees here, which we're going to do our best to save, as well as add more trees there. And then similar story here, we have a nice line of trees on Pat Booker frontage already, thankfully. as well as here, near the secondary access point, we do have some nice clusters of trees. But again, we'll be adding more. And then here's the detention pond. Unfortunately, because we're going to have to construct the detention pond in this area, we won't be able to protect the root systems of these trees, so we will lose all the trees in the detention pond. And all that will give us a finished project that looks something like this, with strong tree buffers along the frontage, the rear edge of the property, and the demarcation line between both projects. Here's our current working development timeline. We'll begin design development as soon as we receive approval, and we expect to close on our land by the end of the year, and then begin construction sometime middle of Q2 next year. And then we will begin to deliver units about a year after that in 2025, around April time. And then finally, we'll deliver our last units around Q3 later that year. And with that, that is all we have this evening.
Okay, what we'll do is open up the public hearing in a minute, and then we'll open it up. I'll make some discussion, and council will talk with you guys about it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That good? Did you want to add anything?
Mr. Strauss?
No, we're just here to answer any questions that you have. Hopefully we will.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, all right. It is 17:10 hours. Is that for military, huh?
19.
Excuse me, 19:10. 17:10 is 5 o'clock. All right, let's open up the public hearing then at 7:10. Anybody want to address council on that? We got a kind of a mixer. It's kind of, yes, ma'am, please.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman.
Please come on up, ma'am, because we record all this.
My name is Patricia Donahue. I live at 326 Balboa Drive. Councilman, Mr. Mayor, Councilwomen, my apologies. Learned gentlemen. I have a question. I noticed that it is a 3-story building, and I have questions as far as ADA ability and the ability for those who have shall we say, physical challenges to be able to rent properties off the first floor, because some of them may also have concerns about safety. So will there be some type of elevator system, something that will allow them to rent properties off of the first floor? Only because I don't need that right now, but you know, only God knows what's coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We can make sure we address that question. Definitely. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, let's close the public hearing at 7:11. We'll move on then to tab number I. Discuss and to consider ordinance 632, PC 578, future land use plan 2023. Ordinance amending the future land use plan to change land use designation of property located at 2280 Pat Booker from CS Commercial Services to GC General Commercial and HDR High Density Residential, and providing for severability and establishing an effective date. So now I'll open it up for comments by council. Mr. Buck?
Thank you, Mr.
Sir?
David and Thomas, thank you guys for coming out here tonight. Certainly appreciate that. You talked about trying to save as many of the trees as possible. Is there any possibility that you could, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've seen it before, it does exist, relocating the trees where they can dig down, grab the roots, pull them out? Because there are a lot of beautiful trees, but there's also a lot of trash trees that are out there. So thinking and replacing some of those trash trees with some of the existing trees that are out there, if they're potentially movable. More of a suggestion.
You can address that anytime, yeah, please.
Can we come back up here?
Yeah, please.
Sir.
I've done that in the past where we had a condominium project in Houston, and we actually, the first building, we lost the trees. The second building, we moved those trees over around the first building, and we did that. So the answer is yes, provided that the tree is movable. I mean, the bigger it gets, the survivability drops to zero. Plus the cost to move a huge tree is, the Texas Bankers Association in Austin is moving trees, has been moving trees for 2 years for a site they're not going to build on for another 2 years. The moving of those trees, and they're magnificent. I mean, you know, they're $1 million trees, and it's costing a couple $100,000 a tree.
So if we set that aside, we can't do that. But what we can do is use like a Vermeer 44, which is a small machine. And the hackberries are not a wonderful tree. We can, remove them, but we can replace them with some of the smaller oaks and others. And Bartlett will be, we use Bartlett trees a lot, and they're known not only to fertilize, juice the roots is what they call it. But we'll take that under consideration and ask them which ones we can move.
That'd be spectacular, thank you. And then also, if we could go back to the designs where the trees were located at, specifically along the frontage road of Pat Booker. Where is, Mr. Casada spoke about not having pole signs in the area, and you would probably have fence signs. Are the trees that are located there going to be inside of the fence line or outside of the fence line? Like, where would that sign go that people would be able to see it?
Monument sign.
Yeah, the monument.
So we are gonna have a monument sign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in a median of its own at the entrance. And the entrance was established by TxDOT, not us.
Yes, sir.
To align with the.
And the deceleration lanes and all of that?
Well, that's not shown on here, but we anticipate TxDOT requiring that. And that should not hurt any trees because there's enough room between the edge of the street.
Yes, sir.
And the trees to put a decel lane.
Very nice. Well, I, for one, am looking forward to having something in that space. It's been vacant for a long time. I know the owners have been trying to sell it for a long time, so happy to see you guys moving in.
Yeah.
Preliminary welcome to Universal City.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you address that lady's concern about the ADA and physical disabilities?
Sure. Every first floor unit is accessible. We will not have an elevator, and therefore somebody that wanted to live upstairs that needed ADA, we would not have. Now, we have a percentage of full-on handicap units, but all of the first floor is accessible. So that's the blunt answer. We won't go into the second floor. There's not going to be that opportunity for somebody in a wheelchair or a walker. But the property, you talk about security, and in our business, you don't like to use the word security because there's a liability that goes along with that. However, we will have a courtesy officer that lives on site that's part of the management team. We have a fence all the way around, and it's gate operated. And so I'm not saying a bad actor couldn't get in there, but we take every precaution to make sure that, people that shouldn't be there don't get there. We really haven't had a big issue with that. I know that might be surprising, but we haven't.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the project in San Marcos, the one with the blue, that doesn't even have a security fence. That's been there for 2.5 years, and we've not had an issue there either. So anyway, but we have a security fence, which should give you some level of security.
Okay. All right. Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a thing that, just so you all understand, when I'm flipping through and I get to your very first landscape plan, and that's basically page 13, that has very few trees on it. So then I got really concerned about that because it says landscape plan, and I started walking through it. I did see schematic, but on the other one, on that one, it still says schematic. I know that's where we're at. I'm just giving you a heads up that I was ready to be very unhappy with this because you had only a few trees shown.
Well, one is the new landscaping, and this is with new and existing. But I get you.
Yeah, was really trying to figure all of that out.
The one thing about this site is the trees. I mean, it's absolutely great. We were walking it this morning with our lender, and we know we're going to lose a bunch of trees, and that's painful because to get the kind of trees that are on this site is 75 years, 50 years, some long number. We'll be having a lot of tree wells. I mean, it's going to be an expensive site to develop for retaining walls, tree wells. And that's why we have Bartlett that will, I mean, we're gonna be doing tree work 3 months before we ever get on site to do anything else.
And then the other thing I wanted to talk about, because I couldn't see a lot of some of the corners on how things go together, but you have stone going to the wood look on the elevation. I'm just asking that you don't have any exterior corner material changes where that's stone and this is wood that comes up to that. Don't do that, please. Do you understand what I'm saying?
This is our architect, yeah.
Okay, I look at that every day coming home and I'm very frustrated. So that's kind of one of the reasons I'm on council, is so I can argue, don't do that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Yes, just to beat a dead horse officially, I'm gonna go to the trees. It would be nice to have you articulate kind of your plan, like to even go in with a goal of we're going to try to save 50 trees, whatever that is, and then actually kind of report back, not officially, but just to say, of the 50 we tried to save, we were successful in 45, and we have then planted this many more. Just because I know that that's going to be an issue to our community. They are really protective of the trees that we have, and we all know we're going to lose some, and there's going to be some that you want to save that something happens and you just aren't able to do so. So that would be one suggestion I would make. It might be nice to see and be able to report back.
I'm sorry, I want to point out in their presentation, if you have your pages number on page 257, which is L1.8, they have a tree survey in there, and they've identified every tree on site.
Okay, sorry.
Which ones are going to stay and which ones are going to be removed. So I would just direct you to that particular page.
Okay, I would just like to see the success rate afterwards, the report, to actually hold it back.
Be more than happy to. The thing is, the tree survey was done by people walking around with tape measures. And so, you know, and they're all numbered. You know, you walk out through there and it's got numbers on every one of those trees. We're not just gonna say, go take tree 24, 14, 60, 81. I mean, we're gonna go out there with a surveyor and mark it. And if we can move the buildings, we will, because we want to save all the trees we can. Because that's the beauty of the site.
It does give you some unique things when, it's going to be a selling point when you go to run it, to have some
Sure.
existing
Absolutely.
mature trees. I know one of the things that I think Councilmember Buck was asking about was the wall signs for the storage unit, as opposed to a monument or a pole sign. Where would that be, on the wall of the storage unit itself?
Yeah, it's similar to that.
Okay.
It probably wouldn't be quite that big. That's pretty big. But it would be on the face of the building. Understand that the site, there's not much frontage on the site.
Right.
So it's almost gonna be the best hidden self-storage built. But we'll have, you know, a sign. I don't see us putting a pylon sign or a monument sign. Just doesn't make sense to me. We may get out there and change our mind. If we do, we'll certainly go through the city, but it'll be a wall sign of something.
And one follow-up question. I know at the May presentation, you talked about trying to get the right to put trucks down the road with the pepper mill, and they were not willing to negotiate with you at that time. Has that changed?
No, I maybe I said this when we were here, I don't know, but I first attempted to ask if we could use it. And be more than happy to compensate them for that. And they said no. And it was about that. That's about the answer I got, no. And then I said, well, hey, would you sell it? Can I buy it from you and give you a permanent easement on it? No. Well, I'm sitting there going, they didn't even ask how much I'd pay. But that was their attitude. And if I owned Pepper Mill, if I was the owner, I'd be upset because I could have taken the $200,000 David is willing to pay him and upgrade Pepper Mill. But, you know, hey, I'm not gonna, somebody's hard-headed, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna beg them. So
And as a final comment, Ms. Sefton's comments about, she was on planning and zoning and architectural suggestion from
Yes.
making the time to Randolph. I thought that was a really smart suggestion, and I'm excited to see that you guys are trying to do something with that.
Planning and zoning was really insightful. And they made two or three really good suggestions that were taken to heart. And there was the lady that sat over here, and I forget her name, really gave the best testimonial about living in apartments. I loved it.
Mr. Joe.
Yeah.
Because it's a lifestyle choice. It's, been around the business a long time, and so I hear a lot of the, you're gonna have traffic, you have noise, you're gonna have, that kind of stuff. And all of that's are concerns that we address. But she really did a good job of saying, hey, it was a lifestyle choice for me, and it served a purpose, and I enjoyed it. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Long.
You said some numbers and I got really excited. So I just want to have you one more time. So you said you had a market study, right? And there was 871 net demand.
Correct.
And so off that, you take yours?
And White Conley's.
White Conley's. Do we know what the status of that project is? Are we fairly certain they're moving forward?
Yeah, so we'll probably issue the building permit within the next month.
Okay, and then how many units was the one in North Lake?
We don't know yet. They haven't presented the ones in North Lake yet.
Well, it's 1604 in Berg,
No, yes, 1604 in Berg.
so that's 291 units. And Junkie, or I'm sorry, 2902.
That's the White Conley
That's
one,
White Conley.
which they've already included in theirs.
That's 268 units.
So I think if we, because you guys didn't have that in your numbers, right? The one that's on Bird in 1604?
No.
So I think that gives us, this is my back of the napkin math, but about 170 units left from that. And there's another one that's potentially being discussed in North Lake, right? I don't know how, we don't really know what that's gonna be like. I guess, is this also, this is probably a question for staff, but this is our last commercial open space on Pat Booker, right? So if we approve this and put apartments on it, we're pretty much done unless we tear something down, or not we, but somebody tears it down. Right? So this is our
I think
last.
vacant property, yes. For redevelopment, no.
So redevelopment being tearing down something and.
No, redevelopment is not tearing down. Redevelopment is either rehabbing existing or tearing down and replacing. That's all considered rehab.
Okay. I think it's just my comment, I think, is I'm struggling with this just because I know there's benefits to the apartments, and you guys have put a good presentation together, and this is probably the great location to do it. It's just our last spot, and with the other 3 potential apartments coming, I know traditional retail is dead, but that's gonna really change the dynamics in our community with all those additional people. I think that might reinvigorate the business community to want something, and we're not gonna have any more land to do that something. I'm not smart enough to know what that is, but I'm concerned that we're gonna lock us in, we're gonna settle on an apartment when we really wanted something else, which I don't know what that is, but do you have any, convince me?
I can't convince you, but I can point out that driving from Randolph Air Force Base entrance this way, I mean, how many vacant buildings are there? And those are gonna be redeveloped, and the development begets development. And you have White Conley, who I've been partners with before. They build a quality product. I build a quality product. And that's gonna raise all of the other apartments to have to rehab, or they're gonna lose out. Their vacancies are gonna go up. But overall, I think you're gonna see a rejuvenation. I already see some new buildings down. I don't know what it is, but there's a white stone building going in down their little strip center. You have the strip center up here with the good Italian restaurant, which if y'all hadn't tried, you need to. It's great. But you're gonna find that with the new development, other people are gonna go, we need to fix our place up. And I think that's gonna happen up and down Pat Booker. That's the only answer I have. But we don't want it to be overbuilt either. And if we didn't know that there was a demand, an ample demand, we wouldn't build a project. I mean, because we're signing on a note.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
go off that last comment, we have a strip mall right next to this facility that has quite a few vacancies in it. That's my thinking as well, to bring more people in Universal City and get more demand on leasing the properties that are available. But that's just a comment. My question being, could you touch on just lightly the possibility of changing the 3 units of the storage into the 1 unit?
Yeah, it's going to, well, the original, we just put in there as a placeholder, which was 3 individual 1-story buildings. It didn't take us long to realize that that really wasn't the best use, and to give us more circulation around the building, to go up to a 3-story, especially when you're going to a fully air-conditioned facility. It's just more efficient, and it will have an elevator, freight elevators. So that decision has really already been made for us, and we're ready to move forward with planned development on a 3-story.
So, thank you very much. So with that said, moving that to, that will now be, say, a single building, but now higher elevation than what these first 3 were planned at. What is the effect as far as the height of the apartments versus the height of the storage unit that's going to be right in back of that?
They'll both be basically the same height, isn't it, like 34 feet?
The apartments will be a little bit taller.
Yeah, a couple of feet, but we're not talking significantly.
So that's, will be the backdrop of anybody in those apartments will be the storage facilities, because of course you can't build a fence that high.
Yeah, no, you'll see. That's correct. But we're putting a landscape buffer all on the back side of
Also, yeah, I was going to say, I believe doing it that way too would probably make ingress, egress to that property a lot easier, since the apartment building on the side doesn't really want you.
Yeah, that was strange, that whole conversation with them.
Is that thought too, that it's going to make a lot easier for, like, say, ingress, egress, and storage facility being the one
right
long?
Yeah.
And I would hope probably taking out less trees as well in the process.
So most, if there's luck, most of those over on the self-storage site are hackberries. They're largely hackberries.
Yeah.
There's some oaks, but mostly of them are hackberries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ms. Palmer, do you have anything else?
I think you guys did a wonderful presentation, but I kind of land on it's too many apartment complexes. I think, unfortunately, like, you guys just came last and we approved a whole bunch, and it just doesn't sit right with me. And I just think that, I think it might be better as like a medical center or something that's just not apartments. That's it. Sorry.
That's fine. You're entitled to your thoughts.
Of course. Ms. Kuzma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as there was a couple of those trees, as I'm looking at the sizes of those trees that are, greater than 25 inch. A couple of 30-inch trees that are oaks. I'd really like you to do more to save those, the heavier ones, the bigger ones. There's a couple of them that I see that are right on the edge of a sidewalk. Move the sidewalk. I understand you probably just got it. I understand the timing. I'm telling you what I'm looking for. And then the whole idea of a 3-story storage unit right there, it does not interest me at all. The single story, I'm fine with it, because we've got tree canopy, we've got tree, I can cover it. I'm just not excited about a 3-story storage unit myself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I think we've had enough discussion. I'll call the question. I do need a motion and a second. This is the flop. We'll work that right. Councilman Najarian. Have a second? Second by Councilmember Buck. Any other discussion then? All right, let's call for the vote then, please. Mr. Najarian and Mr. Buck.
Mr. Casada, do they need to move with specific language?
There are motions included in your packet, if you could.
Yeah.
If you could read them, that would be helpful.
Future land use plan, zoning ordinance.
I have it printed, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
I have it printed, the motions.
Oh, do you? I don't have that.
So if you wish to
Tell you which
withdraw
page
your
on
motion,
your
I can.
packet that is. Since he made the motion, let us find the page number for him.
Okay, or here, I can just hand it down.
That would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Okay,
It's the future land use plan.
thank you very much. Yes, after conducting public hearing on the request for an amendment to the future land use plan for the property at 2280 Pat Booker Road and receiving the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation, City Council has considered and request for moves to approve PC 578, ZC 241, and the amendment to the future land use plan from CS Commercial Services to GC General Commercial and HDR High Density Residential for the subject property with the following conditions. Staff approval of outstanding PUD. Final plan comments. 2, City Council approval for the zone change from C3 Commercial Services to PUD 2023-104 District. Number 3, City Council approval of the PUD final plan. Number 4, Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the final plat of subdivision within 2 years of PUD final plan approval by City Council.
Second.
Okay, that actually includes some of the items we're going to be discussing in the other two public hearings in a minute, but that can be an overall motion then, and been seconded. So if there's any other discussion? All right, let's call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman?
No.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn?
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes then. We'll move on to two more public hearings that are definitely related to the same exact project. First one, and we won't need to have any other discussion unless something comes up with council based on that motion. The next one is no tab 8, and that's a public hearing on a request for zone change from C3 commercial 104 to approximately 12-acre tract located at 2280 Pat Booker for zoning ordinance 581. So I'll open up that public hearing at now 7:35. And anybody want to address it? Zoning change? Okay, we'll close it again 10 seconds later. No one did want to discuss it. So let's move on to no tab number 9 of the public hearing this is approval for the PUD preliminary final plan, again, for that 12-acre tract located at 2280 Pat Booker Road. And so the public hearing, I'll open that at 7:36. There's anybody want to discuss that? If not, I'll close the public hearing at 7:36 in 10 seconds. And we'll move on then to tab number J, which is to discuss and to consider ordinance 581, PUD 2023-105, an ordinance to the city amending the zoning map, City of Universal City for approximately 12 acres at 2280 Pat Booker Road, rezoning said property from C3 commercial to, PUD 2023-104 district, generally for multifamily, residential, and convenience storage, adopting the PUD final plan and providing for severability, providing for the publication of the caption of this ordinance and establishing an effective date. So that's open for council discussion. We'll need a motion on this particular item. This is again related to the zone change and the PUD plan.
I've got a question.
Oh, go ahead, yes, Mr.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, because this is the PUD final acceptance of this, I don't get to grab about 3 stories anymore. I do get to, or I don't get to? You were agreeing with me, okay. I don't like 3 stories, Michael. I don't like that I can see it from the houses in the background and all that, and it just gets.
So if you look at the distance from the single-family homes,
Okay.
it's, if we could pull up the site plan.
Just 1 second, we'll measure it for you.
So the apartment complex, the closest buildings are about 80 feet, or 88, I think we indicated, and then 40 feet. So next one. Yeah, let's just look at that one. So if you look at there's a detention pond in between the storage units and the single-family subdivision. So there's a much larger distance from the single-family homes to the storage units as opposed to the closest apartment complex. You know, as part of the early discussions, and they did generate the plan based on our suggestion, is they put those apartment buildings as far away as possible from the lot line. So not only is there a distance that mitigates that impact to the neighbors, but also the landscaping as well as the fence. With regard to the storage units, you know, those apartments are 3 stories now. And so the people on the 3rd story or 3rd floor are gonna be able to see whatever size building is there. And the building, those buildings will be the maximum 40 feet.
But I don't have a pretty picture of the storage units, do I?
You have an example, representative elevation.
Everywhere I go, I can't.
3009.
It's in the printed handout.
It's in the printed handout. Did I just go past it too quick? So I was looking at trees. Okay, so the apartments have life in them, where the storage unit does not. The apartment has life in those elevations, that storage unit does not.
Right, and
does
so
not have any life to
the
it.
way we wrote it is they're gonna have to comply with the architectural design standard ordinance that's in our code. So they're gonna have the articulation requirements per that code. And so we wrote it that way because it gives them some room to move on the design. We don't wanna lock them in because they weren't sure, at that time, still aren't, exactly who's gonna be building that and what the building is gonna look like. This allows for that framework.
But the PUD process is so that I can look at what they're proposing and I can say yes or
Not
no.
necessarily. If they have a representative or a specific elevation, yes. But it also allows for the flexibility to put in those standards that they're gonna have to comply with when they do the final design.
I would like to put in that they have to bring elevations of that 3-story storage unit back to council. I would like that. I don't know if that's because, again, I also have issues with materials turning corners and materials not turning corners, and I don't get to see it. So I'm just asking that we be allowed, because every other HUD that has come to us, we've had elevations and we've had hours of discussions on. And
Yes and no. The 1604 in Bird, there were 5 lots. So you had the elevations for the apartment complex. You had a representative elevation, just like for the storage unit.
But they showed me a pretty picture.
Yes, they did. They showed you a couple.
Yeah, and they were all pretty.
And those, again, those are representative samples like you're seeing here. The meat of what you're going to see is in the actual PU document, says the articulation, you know, the change in height, the change in color, the change in material, the change in pitch, all of that is built into the PUD document. So when the plans are submitted to us, we're gonna go back and check all that.
And if staff is questioning whether they actually comply with the ordinance, then we can kick that back up to City Council. So you can make you can amend that motion, or I don't think the motion was made yet, but you can include in the motion that condition, and if everyone agrees and it's approved, then that's the condition of approval.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have before us is tab number J, and it includes both the zoning map and the PUD, both of those as results of those 2 public hearings. So one motion can address both of those, the zoning and the PUD.
Yes, sir.
And if someone wants to make a revision to that, then they certainly can in their motion. But it's time for us to go ahead and have a motion on this particular item. And I think instead of reading that, could it be done, or they just said, approve tab number J, the items under that, or does it have to be specifically read? Okay,
Please
specifically
be
read.
specific. This goes into the official records of the city, and state law does require that you give specificity in your motions.
Okay. So then, but we can address the zoning and the PUD in the same motion.
Yes, sir, by approving the ordinance. They're wrapped up within the ordinance,
Right.
581Y PUD 2023-105.
Okay. Make sure we're doing it right.
280, 2280, that was zone change in this preliminary and final plans. So in our agenda packet, there were two separate motions that were proposed, one to approve the zone change and the other to approve the PUD preliminary and final plans.
Right, those are actually from the Planning and Zoning Commission. You're going to the next page, which is tab, help me, somebody tab.
These are the proposed motions for city council. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there are three motions. One is for the FLUP, the second is for the rezoning, the third is for the PUD.
Okay, I apologize.
So all three of them do it. So we've already done one. Do the other two need to be read in their entirety?
Yes, you would like for them to be read in their entirety if you could.
I have
So
no
it would be
objection.
one motion that would include both the zoning and the PUD. Okay.
Do I understood it? Mr. Casada just said we need to read both motions in their entirety and not combine, and does that require then two votes as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then in that case, Mr. Mayor, do you want to
I have
change
no
to it or
idea
anything?
what all I wanted to do is make sure, is ask them to bring some elevations of the storage units back to us.
That will be in the motion to approve the PUD preliminary and final plans.
Okay, I can add you. So do you want to take that one and start working on the revision of the right? Then in that case, Mr. Mayor, after conducting a public hearing on the request for a zone change for the property at 2280 Pat Bucker Road and receiving the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations, City Council has considered the request and moves to approve PC 579, ZC 242, and the zone change from C3 Commercial Services to PUD 2023-104 District for the subject property with the following conditions. 1, staff approval of outstanding PUD final plan comments. 2, City Council approval of the FLUP amendment from Commercial Services to GC General Commercial and HDR High Density Residential. That's our third. 3, the City Council approval of the PUD final plan. And 4, Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the final plat of subdivision within 2 years of the PUD final plan approved by City Council.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Councilman Najarian. Any further discussion, anyone? All right, let's go for the vote then.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman?
No.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn?
The motion passes. Okay, that proceeds, those are the public hearings we had this evening. So what I propose that we do, everyone, is we go back to tab number B, C, D, B, C, and D.
We have one more.
Oh, that's right, the second one on the PUD, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, I motion we approve the PUD preliminary and final plans, PC 580, ZC 243, after conducting a public hearing on the request for approval of the PUD preliminary and final plans and receiving the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. City Council has considered the request and moves to approve PC 580 ZC 243 and the associated PUD preliminary and final plans and PUD ordinances 581-Y-PUD-2023-105 for the property at 2280 Pat Booker Road with the following conditions. Number 1, staff approval of outstanding PUD final plan comments. Number 2, City Council approval of the FLUP amendments from CS Commercial Services to GC General Commercial and HDR High Density Residential. Number 3, City Council approval of the zone change from C5 Highway Commercial and C4 General Commercial to PUD 2023-104 District. Number 4, Planning and Zoning Commission approval of the final plat of subdivision with 2 years of PUD final plan approval by City Council. And number 5, City Council approval of the storage unit exterior design.
Motion made by Mayor for the second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Fitzpatrick. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman?
No.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn?
That motion passes. Okay, let's my suggestion for everyone is we'll do tab B, C, D, and then A, and then we'll get into the public hearing related to the budget, on the budget and then on the tax record. So would you like to take a 5-minute break? And we'll come on back and attack tabs B, C, D, E, and K. Let's take a 5-minute break, everyone, okay?
And the time is 7:46 PM.
And the vote for that. So that's the way we'll proceed. So thanks for your patience. I think that moving it around is best for the bulk of the meeting, which is going to be taken. So let's move on to tab number B, discuss and to consider ordinance 149M 31-9/2023, ordinance of the City of Universal City, amending ordinance 149 fee schedules, amending ordinance 149M 31-9/2022, and repealing all ordinances or parts of them in conflict, and amending the Universal City Code of Ordinances accordingly. Okay, Ms. Turner?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll talk on tab B, C, and D at the same time, since they're all very similar. As you know, when we went through our budget workshop, we had a rate consultant here. He gave us an indication of what our rates needed to be in order to cover our maintenance and operation and capital projects for water, sewer, and stormwater. So those rates have to be effective by September 1, which will actually be September 5th for us, so that they go into effect with the proper billing cycle, since everybody's billing cycle is different. So we have those ordinances before you. It's 3% water, 3% sewer, and 5% stormwater. Again, all of those rates are lower than what we anticipated last year, so that's what we have for you for approval.
We need to act in
You'll act on them separately. I just won't, I won't address each
tab
one.
number B, so I'd be glad to entertain a motion on tab B. Motion by Councilmember Vaughn.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bart. Any discussion further? All right, call for the vote on that one, please.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman. Aye. Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Sorry.
Get used to you eventually.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Okay, motion passes. Tab number C, discuss and to consider ordinance 149M 3209/2023. It's an ordinance of UC amending ordinance 149 fee schedule, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinance in conflict, and amending the Universal City Code ordinances accordingly. Okay, so that is now number 2.
Second.
See now?
Oh.
We got a motion by Councilmember Vaughn, I think, got that one.
Yep.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby. Further discussion? All right, call for that vote, please.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
That motion passes. Tab number D, again, it's consider ordinance 570D 2023, amends ordinance 570C 2022, establish new municipal stormwater utility fees, and amending the code of ordinances.
Move to approve.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Second.
My Councilmember Najarian. Discussion?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Buck.
The numbers, I think, either I'm dorked up or the numbers are dorked up for tab D. If you guys could go look at the numbers from and to for the stormwater from last year to this year, if you see from last year, A and B, it goes residential tier 2 and then residential tier 1. But on this year, it's residential tier 1 and then residential tier 2. And the numbers, residential tier 2 goes from $4.09 to $4.29, and residential tier 1 goes from,
They just transposed them.
so they just switched them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I can address it. I don't know why in previous ordinances it had tier 1, tier 2, and then it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I remember.
So what we did this year to correct it is we did them in numerical order. That's the only change.
Okay, so I see where my problem was. The sizes are different. Last year, tier 1 was 5,000 and more. This year, tier 1 is 0 to 499.
Correct.
But the rates didn't change.
Tier 1 is 5,000 and more, and your tier 2 is 0 to 499.
Yes, sir, but I was a tier 2 before. Speaking my own personal examples, I was a tier 2 last year. This year, I'm a tier 1.
Everybody understand what the confusion level has been around this?
I see it.
So you switched you put them in numerical order, but you didn't flip the size annotations.
No,
You flipped the dollars, but not the sizes of the square feet of the house.
So it's the square foot of the lot.
So think of your own
Yes.
house. Most houses in Universal City last year were a residential tier 2 and we're paying $4.09 a month. Now, everybody under 5,000 is a residential tier 1 and is gonna pay $567. You see what I'm saying?
No.
The dollar amounts are flipped.
So either the
Dollar
dollar
amounts
amounts
are
are
flipped.
flipped, but if you just switch the square
It's the square
footings.
footage that's incorrect.
Correct, if you just flip
Yeah.
the 2 square
We'll
footage.
change that between this, now and the second reading.
Okay.
You are
Okay, good.
correct.
Everybody
you, sir.
understand that then? That clarifies the issue? Okay. All right, so,
See what I'm talking about?
So amend my motion to fix that.
You can approve it with correction, and we'll have it corrected for you at the second reading.
Just approve
Yeah,
it with
requires two readings.
Approved with corrections, yes. Motion.
been made and seconded with corrections. Any other discussion? All right, call for the vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman. Aye. Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
That motion passes. Let's move on now to tab number E, discuss and to consider the FY 2023-2024 UCEDC budget.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, the Economic Development Corporation tries to do its budget at the same time that the city council is, so that we can wrap everything up real nice and neat. Kristen, who tonight is acting as your city clerk, your economic development director, and your live streaming media crew over here, thank you so much, is here to present the EDC budget for you, which they did consider at their last meeting. Thank you, Kristen.
And approved unanimously. So the amended EDC budget was left on your dais, and the original budget that was included in your agenda packet, there was a typo for the 2020 bond debt service interest. It's not $8,611, it's $86,011. And then the contingency was adjusted the $78,000 to account for that. So for proposed revenue, we're budgeting 1.75 million. There's an anticipated carryover of 3.8 million. We did increase our travel training lines a small amount because we do have a new full-time employee and the cost of travel has gone up. Additionally, the membership subscription line was adjusted by $13,000. We did add a couple of new subscriptions, Blue Dot, which will allow for an online business directory and also help us with our Shop Local and Rewards campaign that the EDC is looking to kick off this next budget year. The cost for the website did go up a little bit each quarter, so the adjustment was made for an additional $5,000 for that. Other big changes to the budget based off of last year is the EDC overhead line, which was found in the support services category. This year, the EDC will pay to the city $98,000, and that is overhead for lights, facilities, electronics, those kinds of things. It's a fee that actually all the departments are going to pay to the city moving forward. If we want to skip all the way down to real property and equipment, the infrastructure improvement line, which can cover landscaping, lighting, streets, wayfinding, was increased to 1.2 million from 895,000. Pat Booker Road maintenance, which is also the maintenance line for the properties that are now owned by the EDC, went up to $80,000, and that's because we've owned some more properties that the Heritage Landscape maintains for us. Facade improvement line did go down to $100,000, and that's because we haven't got close to the $250,000 in the past, so I thought the money would be better allocated elsewhere. If you see the prior year projects that we are carrying over, 2405 Pat Booker Road, which is the old Acme Ace building. We still have some properties that we're looking to acquire that EDC and Council has approved the purchase, but we don't have signed contracts and have not closed on, so that's $605,000. And then we still have some pending monies for
Kimley Horn, and HDR for the design thoroughfare and roundabout and Pat Booker Road, totaling about $140,000. So prior year projects total $945,000 that we're carrying over. And our community events line did go up $33,000. That is because several reasons. The cost of her doing the events, our vendors have gone up on us to host the events. Also, our sponsorship dollars has gone down a little bit just with the economy getting harder for people to contribute money to us. And we're also adding several events this year. Property acquisition, we still have budgeted $500,000, and that's because there's still a couple of key parcels that the EDC has identified that the market hasn't presented itself to us yet, but in the case that it does, we would like to have money budgeted for that. And then lastly, a contingency of $842,000, and you're probably wondering why that contingency is so big, and that is because the City Council and EDC is working on some infrastructure improvements at the thoroughfare at Kitty Hawk and also the Reunion development, and we haven't decided who exactly is covering what, but we do anticipate that the EDC may have to go out for a sales tax revenue bond, and the money in the contingency is to cover that debt service for that.
Okay, we'll open it up for discussion, then we'll get a motion. Ms. Bowman?
I just had one question. Your business development mixer workshops, it was previously zero. I know it's only $10,000, but someone just asked, what is it?
I'm glad you said that because I accidentally skipped over that one. We are looking to host business development workshops this year. So we would like to do at least 2 this year. So hopefully right after the first of the year, and then maybe in this July, August timeframe, where we invite all the Universal City businesses in to just kind of give us their feedback. And it's kind of hard to tell you about this initiative without telling you about the initiative before that. So currently we are compiling a survey and we're going to give it out to all the business owners in Universal City because we're actually working without a current business database. We don't have point of contacts for owners, for operators, for businesses. So we're asking them, what brought them to Universal City? What kind of issues are they facing as a small business? If they have social media, if they need help with their social media, what kind of workshops and stuff that they would like the city to do to help them be more successful as a business. And we're hoping to use that feedback to kind of guide us as an EDC on how we can help those businesses more in the future outside of a storefront improvement program. And so once we get all the responses to that survey, that'll give us the connection to them that we need to invite them to these workshops and mixers.
I love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Mr. Wong?
I like that. Thank you. On the infrastructure improvements for 1.2 million, is there anything identified there, or is that a placeholder because of things that you think might be?
It's a little bit of both. So we have been working down in the Reunion district with wayfinding, with specialized lighting, streetscaping, landscaping.
Aviation district.
I'm sorry. Yes, aviation district. Streetscaping and stuff for that project, as well as some of the infrastructure that we've identified that might have to happen up in Reunion. There's nothing committed or earmarked yet, but it's just budgeted to help with either of those 2 big projects.
Okay, and then the 3.8 million anticipated carryover, is that everything you've got?
Yes, sir.
So you're not holding anything back if you want to keep this?
No, sir. Mm-mm.
This does require a motion. Okay, motion by Councilmember Vaughn. Second by Councilmember Najarian. Discussion further, anybody? All right, call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman.
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move down to tab number K, which is the fence permit discussion. It's discussion only again this evening, so let's open it up for discussion. What do you want? Is there any special council wants to present? Staff to council?
Sure.
Okay.
We did, yeah, thank you.
What is it? Is it a PowerPoint?
We added another option in after we had kind of gone back and talked about some of the comments that we got from council. And Mr. Buck was kind enough to give us additional feedback for himself as well. So we've kind of tried to come up with 4 options that you can look at. I apologize to everybody for how small the print is in the audience. Maybe once Maribel gets sat, she could do something to make that a little bit bigger for us on the screen. So we're going to give you a chance to read those, and Michael will go over those in detail.
Yeah, so the new option is 4. That was added compared to what was in your packet.
Thank you, Maribel.
Okay, so you want to describe that option real quick?
Sure, so option 1, as it says, no permit is required, no inspections for fences that are 7 feet or lower. Option 2, no fee for permit or inspections, so a $0 permit. And then option 3 is no permit or inspections for fence maintenance, and we define what fence maintenance is. And the difference between options 3 and 4 with regard to maintenance is that option 3 defines maintenance as replacing 2 or more posts. Option 4 is 1 or more posts.
Okay, Mr. Holmes.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. Does the city check, okay, so pretend I'm a contractor and I want to go get a permit. I'm pulling a permit. Does the city check the contractor, like if they're a legitimate contractor, or is there some sort of like data, like is that part of your process if you get a permit?
Yes, so
Okay.
every contractor has to get registered with the city, and as part of that process, we do a background check. And they have to have a certain number of years in order to be that contractor.
With the exception, if a homeowner wants to use a contractor who does not want to, or will not get registered, the homeowner has the option of pulling the permit themselves and acting as the contractor and using whoever they want to do the fence work.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put out where I land. So I like option 1, but changed 7 feet to 6 feet, so it's not confusing and people don't try to put up a 7-foot fence. Could we just change it to 6 feet or lower? And would it be possible to, I guess, as a caveat, like I would assume the answer is gonna be yes to this for any of the options, but pretend we adopted option 1 and someone still came to the city and was like, can I still pay for an inspection and a permit? Would they have that option? Could it be optional? Could an option be, and so could we do option 1 with an optional, if you want to do it, you could do it?
Well, I guess if you want that, you just direct us to do that, and we would put that in the ordinance.
Okay, so that's kind of where I land is.
Caveat is we got to look at it legally, so we'll just have to.
Yeah, so that's my question is like, could we do 6 feet or under, option number 1, but then if someone for some reason felt the need, like they really wanted a permanent inspection, they would have the option to do that. But that's where I land.
So here, just to play devil's advocate, what I can foresee happening is that the resident says, hey, I want to get this inspected. They hire a contractor to do the work. You're saying they don't have to get a permit, is that right?
No.
Yeah, so option 1 is no permit or inspection.
Okay, but they want the inspection, right? So we fail them, and they have a disagreement then with their contractor, and then they decide that they don't want the inspection, so they can just not have to, so it can be approved.
Fix what's wrong.
That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm old school, I'm wild, wild west, like land of the free, man. So if you want to build your fence, you take that responsibility. If you do it wrong, that's on you, and we all suffer the consequences. But I still think option 1, but just changing it to 6 feet instead of 7 feet, since we can't have a 6 foot, would clear it up, but that's just me.
Mr. Vaughn?
I like the option 4. I think option 1 we kind of voted on, and that didn't work last go around. I think option 4, I would just tweak it a little bit to do a hybrid. I would say permit with a fee and inspection for a new fence, and any replacements or maintenance, a permit and inspection is optional with a fee. So if you want to have your contractor checked and then do an inspection, then you can do that, but any maintenance, any replacements of the existing fence. I know there was a discussion last time about staff was concerned about being able to prove whether there was a fence or wasn't a fence to begin with, but I don't think it would matter because all that matters is they follow the codes. If there's a fence there that's the wrong codes, the city's gonna do code enforcement whether they got a permit or not. But that would be where I would propose.
Okay, can you just say that one more time?
I wrote it
please?
down. He said, option number 4, permit fee and inspection required for new fence, and for the major maintenance and minor maintenance, no permit, no fee, no inspection.
Optional permit and inspection with a fee.
So if they replace their existing fence? completely,
Optional.
It's optional, right? Okay.
Mr. Quillerby, then I'll get Mr. Buck. Phil, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
I like where that went. My only thing is because whenever I'm asking, I'm hearing from people on this and talking to people about this, a lot of people's concern is, well, I don't know the rules. Well, go look up the rules. Well, but I don't know if I have to know the rules. Well, just, we're saying this, there is a no fee permit, right? If I do any major replacing.
Right, so $0 permit.
Okay.
But what Mr.
Optional.
Vaughn is saying.
If they want to get inspected.
So he's using the word option, and again, Ms. Bowman too, I think we should say is that they may pull a permit, not shall, which is what it says right now. We could just use the word, instead of using the word option to pull a permit, they may pull a permit if the homeowner desires, or the contractor.
$0 or with a fee?
0 for the maintenance side, it would be a 0 fee.
What about a replacement fence?
Is if they're going in with, with what they had, I don't see a need for a permit if they're going back in with what they had.
Okay, but if they choose to, for that scenario.
Right.
Are we charging them or not?
I don't know, I'll leave that to somebody smarter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is read to everybody in order to be succinct, and because I think I worded it pretty well, I went over this for about an hour. I'd like to read the email that I sent to Ms. Turner and Mr. Casada explaining my position and why I believe that permits are in the best interests of the entire community. I'm trying to look at this from the entire community and how one person building their fence can potentially have an impact on one or more of their neighbors if the fence is installed improperly. So I wish to make my position clear up front. I believe change is warranted, but I understand the need for inspections. The residents I spoke with in 2022 were unhappy with the requirement to pay a $75 permit fee for maintenance. In many cases, if they only replaced pickets, but it was more than X feet, the cost of the permit very often exceeded the cost of the maintenance. As an example, if one chooses the expensive cedar pickets from Home Depot at $3.28 a picket, replacing only 15 of them would exceed the cost of the permit by about $30. The cost of that replacement would be $49.20 if one does it themselves, but the cost of the permit is $75. So why does my permit cost more than my repair is a reasonable question. However, Mr. Lineman's comments about ensuring a fence does not impede drainage or unreasonably impede access to rights of way are well taken. I recognize the city has an interest in making sure resident safety is not compromised by a fence repair or maintenance that might impede said drainage or right-of-way access. However, every resident pays property taxes to generally fund the operation of the great city in which they've chosen to live. Therefore, if it's in the greater interest of the city to ensure compliance, the city should be prepared to fund the interests of the greater good without placing an increased financial burden on that resident who repairs their fence. So here's what my proposal is. If there's a new fence where there's none there before, you have to pay the $75 permit and you have to get it inspected. It's in the interest of the other residents of the city to make sure that that fence is not going to impede drainage or anything else off of their property that's going to interfere with somebody else's property. Same thing with access to easements and rights of way. If somebody does major maintenance, right, and major is defined in the proposal right there, that means replacing the entire fence, okay, because that's major maintenance. The city still has an interest for the greater good to make sure that the fence is repaired / replaced properly, because otherwise the resident could put whatever they want up there, right? But I, as a resident, want to make sure that my neighbor is not repairing or replacing their fence in a way that's going to now impede the drainage. Minor maintenance, if I'm only spray painting or power washing or replacing less than 15 slats, you don't need a permit, you don't need to pay an inspection fee. But for that major repair, I believe that the city has a greater interest in having the fence inspected to ensure that it maintains compliance with the city codes and the safety, but we're not going to charge them a fee for it, no matter what. The city will absorb that cost, which was a couple $1,000s a year, I believe, made under $10,000, I believe, is what you quoted. So I see the need for the interest of the other residents of the city. You know, if you live out in the wild, wild west, your comments are well taken. If you live way out in the wild, wild west, then absolutely my fence has little impact on anybody else. But here in the community where the houses are so close together, I think we have an interest in ensuring that the safety of all the residents doesn't suffer because of one person who builds their fence in a way that's unsafe. So that's my option 4 that I put up there to make sure that that safety is maintained. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Buck, just a point of correction, it's an
$85. See, all the more reason for them to be upset. That's $10 more.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, on the other hand, love the wording in option 4, except for one caveat. Again, this is Universal City, I think we hold things at a higher standard. The no permit or inspection for minor maintenance, I disagree with. I don't believe there should be, I don't believe there's a purpose for inspection. I still would like to see a no fee permit. And the reason I say that is because, again, just like you brought up, people don't want to be paying $75, $85 when they're just replacing it. And that was the big sticking point. I want to encourage landowners and residents to keep up with their fencing and that. But at the same time, with not having a permit, I don't want to give them just the okay to do it and not be held responsible if they do something other than what they said they were going to do. In other words, if somebody says they're going to go and they want to replace 6 or 7 pickets, yes, I want a permit that says I'm replacing 6 or 7 pickets. And when we go and we find out that they replaced their 6 or 7 pickets with 6 or 7 7-foot pickets, say, that's not what you said you were gonna do when you were talking about your pickets. Your pickets were originally 6 feet. That's what the ordinance was. It wasn't 7 feet. In other words, they're not doing any structural changes. They're just replacing what was already there. But I see where it gets in where they said, well, yeah, you said I could do this. No, we didn't say you could do that. By having them do the permit, we know what they're doing and either can give direction on, well, yeah, you can't put a 7-foot. If they say, I'm going to replace my 6-foot with 7-foot. No, you can't do that. So everybody knows going in at the time what's going on. If they try, and if people are trying to do something other than what they said, we have some bite in that as well. I love the wording, except for, again, the no permit part for minor maintenance. I still believe permits should have to be maintained. That's all I have.
So my synopsis.
Are you having fun with this?
Feels like
No,
there's
we're not.
4 options, 4 scenarios. We need a consensus, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hang on, what's the?
He's waiting for you to, I just wanted to get on his radar. Keep going.
So what I have is option 1, a no permit or inspections for fences that are 6 feet or shorter. Then we have
request an inspection.
option 4, the way it's written, or option 4, if it's a it's optional to get a permit and inspection for replacing and any type of maintenance. And then option 4, everything except for the last column, which is requiring a permit for maintenance but no inspection.
Correct.
Yes. So those are the 4 on the table right now.
So far.
And they're different. That's why.
Very different.
There are obviously a number of you that believe option 4 is the way to go, but there may need some revisions to those options. But Christina?
I have 2 points. I think that what you're looking for from us here is maybe 2 options that we can bring back for a vote. Would that be helpful, better than 4? Or do you want us, would it be more helpful if we gave you kind of came to a consensus here as to narrow it down?
That'd be the best.
So options 1, 2, and 3 are what you gave us last time, or what we could discern that you gave us, and now we have an option 4. So really, in order for us to get this in an ordinance form, we need you to come to consensus on which option and the language in that option so that we can move forward with changing the ordinance.
I definitely support permits for new fences where one did not exist before and paying for that and getting inspected. I'm not opposed to going where Councilmember Buck was going. I will just say that if we issue permits and no-cost permits and inspections, and we have the city eat that cost, that ultimately that cost is passed on to all of the taxpayers because, so instead of charging the person who's doing the work, we're rolling that out to everyone. And that's okay if that's what we decide to do, but it's not like we're not eating that expense. We're gonna have to come up with that money someplace. So I don't mind that. For maintenance, that's not the hanging point for me. I think the fact is the biggest thing that was the biggest disconnect or biggest dissatisfier was paying the permit for maintenance, and I'm A-okay getting rid of that. So that's kind of getting to where I am. I definitely want to see permit for new. I think there's value in adding permit for major maintenance. That's fine if we don't want to charge for that. I think it's still good for getting it inspected. I think to your point, for the greater good of the community, I think there's value in making sure that it was safely. That's where I'm at.
So, okay, so for major, you're okay with getting a permit but no fee. And then for minor, what are you saying?
I personally just want to see the fee go away. Whether or not we have a permit or not is not my big hanging point on that one. I know there's other people that, we're going to have to come up with a compromise here at some point to be able to decide this very small thing. We spent a lot of time talking about fences. I would really like to see us figure out what we can do with this to put it to bed so we can get on to what we really should be doing is budget.
I agree. We kind of gave them some direction last time, and thanks to Mr. Buck's recommendation, I think that's probably one of the most viable options. I would personally feel like if there's going to be major maintenance done, and we have to inspect it, the city shouldn't have to bite the bullet on that. I would like to see maybe a small fee, maybe $20, something like that, to help cover the city's cost for maintenance when we're still going to require an inspection. So I would like to see us add that into there, just a small fee, not the $85, but a smaller fee, because we have to absorb that somewhat with the city. So this way, a smaller fee I think would be appropriate. That's my position. Okay, Mr. Coolsby, and then we'll get you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so if we look at option 4, the thing that I'm not seeing in option 4 is, the wording on a new fence, and that would have to, the new fence needs a permit.
Yeah, it's on the left.
First column?
First, has 3 columns. That's the only thing I believe that most of you have agreed upon, is that for a new fence where one didn't exist before.
Oh, that's part of option 4? See
Is,
my line right there, right?
It's
Okay.
also in option 3, by the way. That's the only thing I feel like y'all have agreed on so far.
Okay, so on option 4, sorry, I was amazed that I had 3 and 4 combined, and so, sorry. Good job on 4 then, because that was the part I liked that I had scratched out. A permit's required, but for the major maintenance, but if you want an inspection, then we add that fee? So that the city isn't eating the exorbitant cost of the permit and inspection.
I think if it's major maintenance, there should be an inspection, and there should be a fee charged for that inspection. That's
Okay, I was trying, I'm not a big
I
fan of.
But I
major maintenance
think
inspections.
it should be a smaller number, definitely. And I would throw out $25 as an option.
Kim, can we do a straw poll?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Buck.
Very well, Mr. Mayor, I agree. Let's put in a fee for $25 for major maintenance. So for option 4, column 1, permit and fee inspection required for a new fee, for a new fence, or if you're rerouting changing the direction of the fence, something like that. In the second column, $25 fee for permit or inspection for major maintenance. Councilmember Fitzpatrick, your points are very well taken about the city having to absorb the fee. When I use the term the city, I mean we the city, because we are the city. I thought long and hard about that, and there's a lot of services that the city pays for that only a few people avail themselves of. I'm thinking the library, the animal shelter, something like that. So that's kind of where it went with me. We pay for the police, even though the vast majority of people don't use the police for anything in the city. So that was kind of what my thinking was with regarding to that. But if everybody would be good with adding a $25 fee and then to that second column, and then is everybody good with it as it's written for option 4?
So,
in general, you're anti.
I think we need to make some motions and vote.
Well, we can't, this is discussion, we can't make.
Can we
a motion
finish the
tonight.
discussion?
Because
Give
We
them
haven't gotten to
direction.
column 3 yet.
Discussion only, we're giving guidance to the staff about which option we want to see them move forward with with amending the ordinance for the city. So we tell them which of these options we want them to move forward with. They draft the ordinance language, and then we vote on that ordinance.
So Councilmember Buck, in your option 4, if they want to do a replacement fence, do they have to get a permit?
Yes.
Yeah, because it's a $25 fee.
Repairing or replacing 15 or more pickets.
Column 2,
Or
option 4.
repairing or replacing more than one post, okay? But all the way down at the bottom, repair or maintenance beyond the minor fence maintenance definition that does not change the path of that does not change the fence's path, right? So if it was square like that before, but they want to add curves in it or something like that, that's going to require the permit at the beginning. Modification to an existing fence not covered in minor or major fence maintenance definitions. The second one in the major is that repair or maintenance beyond the minor fence that does not change its path. So if all you're doing is replacing the fence exactly in the same place that it was before with exactly, and then if you could scroll up, Ms. Marybell, to show the rest because that column goes quite a bit farther there. There we go. That does not change its path, composition, material, height, or fence to ground clearance. If it changes any of those things, then you're back in column 1.
Which is basically going from a chain link fence to a wood
If
fence.
you go from a chain link fence to a wood fence,
That's a
you're gonna
new
have to pay
fence.
for the fee, you're gonna have to pay for the permit and get the inspection.
Okay.
If you change the path, the composition, the height, anything, if you're putting exactly the same thing right back where it was before, $25 fee and an inspection.
Okay, can we go to column 3 of option 4?
Yeah, so if I go to Home Depot and I buy 14 pickets and replace them on my own, the city doesn't have to come out and have a look at it. If I power wash it, if I stain it, if I paint it, if I wash it, whatever. Or if all I repair is 15 pickets, the lattice, the rail runner, the trim, the post caps, it's not changing the composition of the fence. It's not changing the ground, the fence to ground clearance. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, we understand that. Okay, we have that. Our question is that now we've changed from column 2 of option 4 to a $25 fee for the permit and inspection.
Correct.
And so what are you doing? No permit and no inspection for minor, whatever you're calling
Yes.
minor maintenance?
Yes,
Or are you requiring, again, I'm not asking just you, I'm asking all of you. Or are you saying, yeah, a $0 permit, just so that we can guide you through the process?
my proposal, ma'am, and to my fellow council members would be that we leave column 3 the same as it is. If all you're doing is washing, painting, staining your fence, nobody needs to come out and look at your fence and make sure that you did it.
Well, we wouldn't look at it anyway, even under the current ordinance. The only thing that we would be looking at is repairing or replacing fewer than 15 pickets, lattice, whatever your
Yeah.
third bullet
So
point
the,
is.
so the minor repair would still be repairing or replacing fewer than 15 pickets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No permit, no fee, no inspection required.
Can we change that to 17, fewer than 17, because there's usually 8 pickets in a.
17. Fewer than 17 pickets, and then over in column 2, changing it to 18 or more pickets.
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna go back up to the top.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, not just Mr. Buck, I'm asking everybody. So for what is classified as minor, which is fewer than 17 pickets, replacing fewer than 17 pickets.
I'm sorry, fewer than 17 or fewer than 18?
Fewer than 17, because
And
16.
then 17 or, and then 17 or
16
more.
is 2 panels.
Okay, and then, so repairing fewer than 17 and 17 or more in column 2.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
What I'm asking you up in the blue section where it says no permit or inspection for minor maintenance, what does council want to place there?
Also for the minor maintenance. For the third column, for that minor maintenance.
It's really simple. Permit or no permit, fee or no fee. That's
Yes,
what
ma'am.
we're asking.
Mr.
We get some
Mayor,
direction.
I'll yield my time so other council members can talk. Mr. Najarian.
I think we're getting down to it finally, and I agree with everything. I have no problem with all that, the 25, I'm on board with all of it. I just still believe there should be a no-fee permit on line 3, take out the inspection, but no fee permit, just so we know what they're doing. If next door neighbor calls the city and is complaining that this person did this, that, and the other, and it's not the same thing that they originally went to get their permit for, then we can say, hey, that's not what you put here. But yeah, no fee, but I still think we should have a permit. I'm good with everything else. If I have, I'm
All right. Let's give some direction to staff is what we're looking for. I think most of the council agrees with that option 4 is a viable option. With some modifications, adding a smaller fee. And Mr. Najarian says for that should be no permit. Should still be a permit.
Yeah, there should be a permit.
That's
No fee, yeah, no fee
No fee.
permit required, and then taking out the maintenance, or, excuse me, the inspection clause. Just, I'm sorry to keep people on, and honest people honest.
Yes, Ms.
Want
Bowman.
a consensus? I'm just gonna be no, so, but, I mean, obviously I'm outnumbered, but like I said, I don't like option 4, I don't agree with it, so my consensus there is no, so I think the rest of you need to figure out what you like for option 4, because I'm just gonna vote no, so.
Mr. Vaughn.
I'd probably no too on option 4, the way it is. Or with a permit in the third column.
Okay, so I think we can draft it based on that feedback. We're going to draft it, though, Councilmember Najarian, without the third column requiring a permit, because it sounds like 3 out of the remaining 4 they were okay with the way it's written.
That would be called compromise, and I've done that in the past.
All right.
Well, that's, so
we'll draft that ordinance.
then we would request that you come back to us with the proposed ordinance.
Yes, sir.
On that proposed ordinance. Bingo.
Good thing Mr. Hill's not here.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
We're going to have a public hearing in a second here on the 22 23-24 budget. Let the presentation be made by staff, and I'll open up the public hearing, and then we'll have discussion by council. Turner?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, we're operating under some rules as required by state law when it comes to our budget. So we are required to start having our public hearings for our proposed budget. I know you had a workshop. You gave us some direction on what you wanted us to change. Christine's going to go through that. She's going to identify the changes that we've made based on your feedback. And then I guess after that, Mary, you could go ahead and open up the public hearings for public comment. Okay, thank you. And we have lost the clicker
I
somewhere.
don't think we're gonna need the clicker right now.
Okay.
It's not really that much information that they've changed. So it'll be okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Okay, I'll get it for the next one. Thank you.
The few changes that were made included the development services employee that you wanted to add the $50,000. Fire department contracts, $30,000, bless you. Equipment for the police department, which was $20,000. We've included fire and police department physicals, which equaled $10,500. General services equipment at $85,000. General services vehicles was $120,000. And library technology, we added $20,000 to. There's still some question about the diesel mechanic, whether or not we want to move forward with that. If we did, we could go half and half between the general fund and the utility fund, with an approximate of about $30,000 for each of those two funds. Employee recognition, we have not said anything, no further discussion concerning that. And the remaining unallocated amount is $157,000.
And I would like to point out for the residents and for council that the budget that is posted on the city's website does include the discussion items that she just went over.
Any other presentation from staff?
That is the presentation.
Okay.
We'll
go
be doing
ahead.
this again at the next.
It is now 8:45. I'll open the public hearing. And there was one individual that did sign up to discuss item on that. It's Mr. Rubal. Sir? And anyone else can certainly follow.
Mr. Mayor, council members, there are a couple of things that I've been tracking, and that is, for example, we're increasing our number of detectives, not from 1 to 2, but from 3 to 4 in this budget. Number 2 is, in spite of the fact that we've increased members of the police force, there's no decrease in the overtime that's being budgeted for the police force or the fire department for that matter. So essentially we're increasing personnel, but seeing no benefit from a decreased overtime cost. Number 3 or 4, I forgot what my number is. I think the golf course budget does not have included in it $300,000 as required now for administrative overhead. Also, it appears that the $100,000 quote-unquote water use is probably best put under irrigation because essentially I assume that that $100,000 is actually Cibolo Creek Municipal Authority reuse water. So it doesn't quite match under that heading type thing. In addition to that, I find it somewhat confusing when looking at the budget that if we look at the golf course budget, it actually is essentially has a net earning for revenue, honest earning for revenue of approximately $900,000 rather than the $2.2 million because it's supplemented by tax revenue. That means that this current budget actually has, as the actual numbers are, that the subsidy for the golf course currently is approximately 54%. The other thing that's kind of confusing is whenever you look at the food and beverage account on the current budget, the actual number is $247,000 and the current deficit for food and beverage expenses for food and beverage are $537,000. So that's actually a $289,000 deficit and I don't know if there's a decimal error there or something. It seems quite off for the actual numbers for 2020 and 2023. And finally, just a small point. And the small point is with regard to the college tuition fund. When I talk to city employees, I find that they're generally unaware of the program. And so I did an open records request and found that indeed one of our detectives is taking advantage of the college tuition fund. And that during the period of time of that funding, at least the way I understand what was sent to me, is that the only amount of overtime he had was approximately a week and a half, which begs the question then, why have you really looked at the overtime that detectives have to justify a new position? And finally, I'm confused about the entry of the diesel mechanic. Is that specific for the fire department with specialties, and how does that figure into the fact that we're moving toward essentially a more regional supplier for maintenance person, as we heard from a presentation just 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I guess. So the advantage of getting the new trucks was that there'd be new service available locally. So that seems to have an offsetting effect. With that, I just remind council of the fact there seems to be a lot of dead space also in the budget, and I just ask you to look very, very closely at the numbers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Anyone else like to address this public hearing before we get into discussion by staff, by council? Okay, I'll close the hearing now at 10 minutes to 9. And we'll go on now to the, well, actually, the next item is tab number F. There's a presentation on the proposed 2023 tax rate to support the budget.
Yes, Mayor.
And then we'll address everything together.
So I just want to point out that yes, we are. This is where the rubber meets the road, right? You have two things you do as a budget. One is you set your budget and the items that are in it, and your maintenance and operational items and your capital projects. And then the second thing you do is you have to have a tax rate to support that. So we have received, again, I apologize, late, the certified tax rolls from our two taxing entities. And so Christine has taken the information that they've given you and put together a PowerPoint presentation for you. I do want to remind you that you do need to come in your head and ready for you to come out of your mouth tonight, your record vote, because whatever you vote tonight has to go into the public paper for everyone to see. We'll be posting in the San Antonio Express News as well as the Seguin Gazette, and that is your record vote. And so when we get into September and we hold our public hearings and our final votes again, that's it. We're done at that point. So be sure where you're going this evening, ask all the questions you want. Hopefully, please, we won't get into the last year where what if we did this, what if we did that. We tried to anticipate some of that by giving you not just the no new revenue, the de minimis, and the voter approval. We've added others in for you to consider. Mr. Vaughn has worked his magic, what did he call it, Phil's, I don't know what you called it, it was on the top of it, Phil's packet of fun. Again, we just kind of, you have to lock it down tonight. Let me just leave it with that, and then we'll go ahead and do our presentation, and then our public hearing, and then the vote. And I have the clicker here, and I can do that. Thank you. Yeah. So you have one less thing to worry about. You just say next.
I appreciate that. Mayor and Council, I don't want to apologize, but I want to let you know that just because of an interest of time is why we just highlighted the items that were changed within the budget. I think going page by page by page would have been a little much considering we've already gone through it. But with the next presentation, we'll be sure that we're more thorough. Okay, so before you should have the 2023 tax rates that will affect the fiscal year for 2024. The tax rate calculation worksheet is prepared by the county tax assessor's offices each year. The information is reviewed by city staff to ensure accuracy, and they have provided three rate options. They've calculated three rate options within the worksheet. The first rate is no new revenue, voter approval rate, and de minimis rate. The no new revenue represents the tax levy that would be almost equal to this current year's collection. Voter approval is a total of the no new revenue for the M&O times 3.5% plus any unused increment rate. And then again, adding to that the debt service rate. The de minimis rate is the sum of the no new revenue that, when applied to the city's current tax value, would result in an additional $500,000 in tax levy, plus the city's current debt rate. The rate calculations are all presented here, as well as the 2022 adopted tax rate, just so that you have that as a reminder of what it was. If the property values were to stay level, it would take approximately a year to add back each penny that the tax rate is decreased. For instance, if we reduce it by 4 pennies, we can anticipate it would take us approximately 4 years to recover that. So next slide, please. Thank you. Potential revenue to the city is represented here. Included is the revenue amount that each penny represents to the city by tax rate option. It averages about $200,000 for each penny that it's reduced.
Are we in the question period, Mr. Mayor, or is this just the presentation? We'll do questions later.
What's your preference?
I'm
Ask your question if the mayor is okay with that.
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you. If the valuations for all of the taxable properties in Universal City is set, the voter approval rates and the de minimis, all those rates that you have for 2023, 1 cent of increased tax liability per $100 of valuation, shouldn't all of those numbers be the same?
No, just because the tax rate, the way that the maintenance and operation is, if it's the higher the tax rate, the lower the penny, if that makes any sense.
I got it now, because as you get more expensive.
Exactly, it comes down.
The 1 cent means more money.
It actually means less money because it's worth less than it would have been. Say, if you have $5.
I understand.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry. I
That's
just
okay.
needed to vocalize it.
No, actually, when I wrote it out and I calculated it, I questioned it myself a couple times trying to figure out why it was that way. But that, we've gone over it a couple times and it's correct. It's just because the higher the tax rate, the more value there is, the less a penny is worth. It's pretty much what it is. So next slide, please. So here we have, if you have a property that's $100,000, it would be $45 a year that you're paying, a month that you're paying for taxes. So what we did is we are using the current adopted tax rate of 0.54, and a home valued at $100,000 would have a tax burden of $45 a month. Staff has represented the monthly effect each rate would have on property owners. The voter approval rate increases the tax burden on property owners, so I'd really rather focus on the other two rates. The no new revenue and the de minimis rate offer a lower tax burden for each of the property owner, for all the property owners. The average market value for homes in Universal City is approximately $300,000. The no new revenue rate would represent a decrease of approximately $9.48 for each home. Just to put it into perspective, that would be maybe 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks, a pack of cigarettes for a person that smokes, and a big pack of gum. So it's really not that much money that we're saving our citizens, given the rates that have been presented.
Okay, this I think Mr. Barnett's comment.
That would be true if their home value stayed the same, correct?
Yes, sir, that's if, well, which, I don't understand your question.
Well, if you had a $100,000 home.
Yes.
You paid $45 a month last year.
Yes.
But if your home this year is worth $110, you would pay $46 a month.
Exactly, yes. Right, exactly. So
if they stayed the same, then you would
It can fluctuate a little bit, but overall, there's not a lot of savings, unfortunately. Except for zero, right? Okay, so next slide, please.
I'm sorry, I have one comment to Mr. Vaughn's comment. That your comment doesn't take into account the additional entities that have been added to the tax rolls. So even if their value the house went from $100,000 to $110,000, at the new revenue rate, they're still gonna see more money because of all the houses that have been added to the rolls that are now taxable, that are bringing in additional revenue.
We're just talking about one example property in this slide.
Yes, I understand, but even still, if their house increased in value by $110,000, the new revenue rate still results in them saving $3.16.
It's a tax increase. If they went to 110, they would pay $46 a month, which would be more than what they were paying last year on the no new revenue rate. That one house that was 100,000.
No, because the new revenue rate is less than 0.54.
It gives you the $41.84. If you were 100,000 last year, you paid 45. If you would do the new revenue rate, you would pay $41.84 a month. But as we all know, everyone on this dais, including Ms. Kerner, we all went up 10%. And so most homes did because that's the cap. So most homes went to 110. So if we adopt the no new revenue rate as presented, it would be a $1 increase per month for every homeowner that went up 10%, which is basically all of them.
Okay.
Which is still immaterial. So the next slide. In 2022, the city implemented a tax ceiling or freeze for single-family residential property owners that are over 65, as well as those with disabilities. The percentage of those qualifying for these exemptions increased from 45% to 46% between 2022 and 2023. With the aging population of Universal City, we can anticipate this percentage to continue to increase. These charts represent the percentage of single-family residential property owners that are included in the tax ceiling that have a DV4 tax exemption, which means they're 100% exempt from property tax, as well as single-family residential property owners that do not qualify for these exemptions. As you can see, almost half of the homes in Universal City qualify for the exemptions currently. As shown in the prior slide, many property owners would see a minimal reduction in their tax burden if the tax rate decreased. However, when future rates are increased, it would disproportionately affect commercial property owners, other property type owners, and those single-family residential owners that do not qualify for these exemptions or any of the exemptions previously discussed, meaning that these property owners would carry the brunt of the increase whenever it does have to be increased. Next slide, please. Thank you. So staff is provided 4 possible tax rate options, which here are the tax rates calculated revenue projection and the ad valorem budgeted revenue for 2024. The revenues are calculated at 98.95% collection rate. Based on the information provided in this presentation, staff is recommending a proposed tax rate that is no less than the de minimis rate. This is a conservative approach that would benefit Universal City property owners while also ensuring that city staff is able to provide the essential services to all citizens and business owners of Universal City. Please keep in mind that 1 penny change can affect us for the future and could affect future councils. And that, next page, please. Thank you, sorry. So there are just a few items to consider. The city has been using the ARPA funds, or the American Recovery Act funds, to fund the police and the fire mental health officers. These funding options, or this funding option, will no longer be available as of fiscal year 2025. City Council has discussed adding a position for the development services and possibility of a diesel mechanic. These positions will increase the budget indefinitely, and then the more the city grows, the more staffing could be needed. The following options would be available if if revenues collected during the fiscal year 24 exceeded the amount budgeted. It could be added to fund balance. It could be allocated to the capital replacement fund where it can be used for vehicle replacement, HVAC replacement, or et cetera, and also would allow staff to plan for future costs. It could also be used for the repairs to the City Hall building, which I know right now we need the roof to be replaced, which has been estimated or quoted at about $500,000. It could be used for additional street and park improvements, as well as additional staffing if needed. And again, with the diesel mechanic, we had discussed it being used for the water equipment, public works equipment, and I believe the fire equipment as well. That's all I have.
Mr. Vaughn.
Just one clarification question. So when you went through the changes in the budget,
Yes, sir.
you said it was available on the website. Can you tell me again what the surplus is that you said left over in the general fund? Because I'm looking at the one on the website and the one on our packet.
Well, let's see. Well, you and I had discussed, forgive me, we had discussed the CPS 1% as not being restricted. And after reviewing the information, looking at the past council meetings, it's not, so that increased it by 225,000. And then there's a 157,000, which is the difference between what has been, how council has directed us to use those monies and then what's remaining to be used. But that's why it's 300 and something is because of the 225. Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yes, Mr. Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On those proposed tax rate totals, everything that you told us that was in the budget and that was included based from our budget workshop, the new development services person, a second Jacqueline, and the equipment for the fire department and all the chest x-rays and the equipment and stuff like that, these excess short numbers are representative of how much that tax rate would go over the budget and how much. So if we were to do 517,499, we would have an excess of $164,000.
Yes, now, we also have to consider that our debt service, we have some fund balance that we could use towards that, which is about $300,000. If we do that, then it would reduce that. It would reduce the budgeted revenue to 10,200 or 2,075.
You mean 10 million?
Thank you. That's exactly
10
what I
million.
meant. That's what I meant at 9 o'clock at night. Yes, ma'am.
And also that we have a general fund, what we called it the operating reserve, and we had a previous discussion on council about what our operating reserve should be, a minimum of 12 months. I don't think we ever set a maximum. How much do we currently have?
Currently,
Give or take.
We could fall short this fiscal year.
So if we
right now we would need about $15 million, and I believe at the end of fiscal year 22, we had $14 million roughly in fund balance.
Tell me the first number again. How much would we need total?
15 million.
15 million. And
we have 14 million as of fiscal year 22 end. So we're right on the cusp of being able to do it. But the thing about the fund balance is you have to recognize too that fund balance can include prepaid items. It can include delinquent taxes, these types of items. So when you're talking about budget and you're talking about fund balance, they're kind of different.
Yes, ma'am. What I was talking about was our operating reserve, that we've talked about having a 12-month, 13, 14, 15-month operating reserve.
That's the 12-month fund balance. So it's not really a reserve. The reserve would be current assets, current liabilities. What do you have that you could liquidate in a quick period in order to cover that year? And that's kind of the difference between the two. But as of fiscal year 22, the fund balance available is approximately $14 million, and we will need approximately $15 million as of this year.
So we're going to add all of that money that we're about to levy on the residents, plus all the sales tax. So as soon as people start paying their property tax bills come January.
Well, we're kind of talking in two different periods, though. Are you referring to fiscal year 24 or fiscal year 23?
I'm referring to the tax levy because what we're doing right now is setting the tax rate for 2023.
Yes, sir.
They're going to pay it in fiscal year 24 because they're going to pay it in calendar year January 2024. So once they make those payments, our fund balances are going to start going, our checking account balances are going to start going way up, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to what we're about to levy on the residents in property taxes as well as sales tax coming in, we have an excess right now, you said, of about $14 million.
We have about 12 months.
I don't want to say an excess.
Yeah.
About 12 months of
We have
operating?
about 12 months, yes.
Okay, so we're right about where we need to be?
Yes, sir, and I apologize. I was going from fiscal year 22 to 23, so yes, sir, you're correct.
And we agreed in the budget thing that we would want to stay at 12 months.
Yes, sir.
Right, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the year, just so you understand that. That's typically something that we would monitor to make sure that we stay within that. If we found that we were not, then we would come back to council and say, you know, hey, we're close. We'll probably make it at the end of the year. We're probably not going to make it. Here's some adjustments we're recommending that we do. All of that stuff will happen.
My thought process was if you were to say we're at about a 14-month operating revenue, that we have operating reserves, I suppose. If we were a little bit over what we needed, we could do that 92,000. Like if we had $4 million beyond what our city needs to operate for a year, we could absorb that $92,000 shortfall, knowing that our fund balances are going to go back down again and we'll break even at the end of the year.
The only thing you want to consider with that is if tax rates go up next year and you have to increase by 3 cents, for instance, you're going to affect those property owners that do not qualify for those exemptions, because the other persons will stay frozen at whatever their rate is. And if the percentage of persons that qualify for that exemption increase, it reduces the number of people that have to carry that heavier burden. And again, it takes about a year to recover a penny.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other thing I'll remind you, and it's a good point that you brought up where she is showing the shortage. By law, we have to have a balanced budget. So you can see where the numbers are kind of nudging us to go. We're just throwing that out for council to understand that you have to have a balanced budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anyone else?
Public hearing now, or?
Public hearing's done.
We already did the public hearing.
What we're doing now
We
is
did the public hearing for the budget. Thank you,
discussing
Mr.
that rate.
Vaughn.
What we'll
You're
do is
correct.
have a public hearing now on the proposed tax rate.
And then we'll have
And
council
we'll have
discussion
yes.
and a record
Yes,
vote.
yes.
You are correct.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Okay, so we'll move to the public hearing, no tab 2, public hearing on the proposed 2023 tax rate to support the 2023-2024 budget. So I think we've already heard from Christine what
Yes, sir.
their
You can just
options
open the
are.
public hearing.
So I'll just go ahead and open up the public hearing, and anybody would like to address it, please do it. It is now 9:11. Mr. Rubaugh?
Mr. Mayor and council members, $92,000. There's not $92,000 that can be taken from the budget that was presented in the budget workshop here. $92,000. Okay. Our city manager is making over $200,000. Okay. We've been very generous to our employees for 2.5% essentially increase plus cost of living increases. There has to be a way to cut from the budget. It's been presented, the $92,000 to come up with a balanced budget. That's all we ask, is to look at the budget for a reduction to meet what the expenses are. Let's go from the tax rate to make the budget work, cutting the deficit. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I respectfully, and I understand budgets, I have to live with one. I'm a public school, public university retired teacher. I think you all are aware what's going to be on the November ballot, thanks to our Texas legislature, is the first ever cost of living increase for retired teachers. And they're looking at maybe a 2% increase. There are people who have retired from public education either because of health reasons, because they reached the magic number of 80 and qualified for retirement, but they do not meet the 65-year age requirement for the freezing of their taxes. My budget is fixed. Everything is going up. Everything. And I'm gonna second what Mr. Rubel said. I understand the city has a budget it has to meet, and I appreciate that. I am sensitive to that. But I also ask that the council and the city be sensitive to those people who are on fixed incomes, who do not qualify for the freeze on the taxes. And yes, I understand, as was presented ad nauseum last year when we voted on that, that extending that courtesy to those who are 65 and older will put a burden on others. I get it. But you know what? Sometimes people have paid their dues, and they do deserve a little bit of a break. So I am asking you to truly consider, where can you cut 500 here, 500 there? I'm not saying the 92,000 has to come from one location. To quote the movie Dave with Kevin Kline, he said, "Give me the budget. I'll go through and I'll make it work." I don't want that job. That's why Phil's on there, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I simply am asking you to consider those whose means are getting shorter and shorter and shorter because our inflation continues to go up. Even if it says it's coming down, prices are not coming down. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, let's close it at 9:15, and now we'll open it up for discussion by council. Start with Phil, and then we'll move the.
I move we approve a tax rate of 49 cents.
I second that motion.
All right, there is a motion and a second. There's plenty of time for discussion. So
So then, so look, my packet of funds in front of you. I'm gonna have to go through it because you'll have to hear me out. I think 49 cents is the way we should go, and I know it's gonna freak everybody out, so let me just explain it. One of the things that I think was just discussed was on the excess or shortage of the tax rate. So the 92 cents, the 92,000 that was brought up, just to ram that home, that's not how much we would be short in the general fund. It's how much we would be short over the budgeted property tax revenue. And we have a $382,000 surplus right now in the general fund. So bottom line, we have $382,000. We don't know what it's for. We just have that left over. So even if we were short on that tax rate, then we would have that 382 to draw on if we wanted to. What the city is proposing, though, is the budgeted revenue that's in our draft. What Ms. Green mentioned was our debt service fund balance. So right now we have $1.5 million in fund balance in the debt service fund. We adopted a policy and we said we'd keep 3 months. 3 months is around 500,000 or so in the debt service fund. We have $1.5 million left over, and that's in the budget. It's not my number. That's one page in the budget. And I've copied it on the third page of your packet of fund. But that $1.5 million, we can't do anything with it but pay debt. So the smart thing to do with that is to reduce it over a short period of time to where we can utilize it to help offset the property tax rate. Now that $1 million excess would buy us the next 3 years of the street bond to where we don't have to pay that increase for the street bond. It's about $300,000 a year. And Ms. Green has worked that into her tax worksheet and it's on the website, so that instead of trying to get $2.1 million from the taxpayers for debt this year, we would only need to get 1.8, and we use some of our reserves to offset the INS tax rate. So that's what this first page shows you is the budgeted revenue of 10.3 is what Ms. Green presented, and then the adjusted budgeted revenue would be the $300,000 less. So if we use some debt service fund balance, then all of the rates on this first page would cover what we need for the general fund, plus the $382,000 surplus that we already have in the general fund. The important thing that I think we all need to keep in mind is what do these tax rates do to the citizens that we've already heard tonight? If we adopt the no new revenue rate, that's the last column there, assuming all the homeowners went up 10%, and like I said, all of us on this dais, Ms. Turner went up, all of us went up 10%. That would be a 2.5% tax increase that everybody would pay in addition to what they paid last year. They would all pay 2.5% more. In order for them to pay the same that they paid last year, it would be the 49 cents. And the 49 cents would give us that $10 million revenue plus an extra 18,000 left over. I would also like to point out that our businesses are getting crushed, and that's on page 2. I've given you some examples here, like Aria Grove went from 33 million to 39 million. So if we adopt the 52 cents that's in the budget, Aria Grove's tax, the actual tax that they pay would go up 14%. Gather Brewery would go up 65%. The Triangle Shopping Center, Mr. Gaddy's Bella Sera, that would go up 43%, the actual tax that they would pay. The Randolph Plaza, that's Polly's and Hallmark, would go up 18%. The Planet Fitness Shopping Center would go up 17%. A local architect, who shall remain nameless, will pay 30% more. And so I think if we really want to attract businesses, we've got to take into consideration what they're going to be, because they don't get the benefit of a cap on how much they grow every year like the homeowners do. I also want to point out that we are still the 5th highest tax rate in our area, and that's on the page 5 of your packet of funds. We did come down this last year to 54 cents, but that got us to the 5th highest. We were the 3rd highest, and we still need some work on there. If we're trying to attract a business from Shirts or Cibolo, we can't compete with Selma, but we need to get under that 50-cent mark. Right now, the average of these cities in our area is at 40.7 cents, so we'd still be working towards that. You have Shirts at 49.5, so we'd be more in line with our neighbors. And I would just say again that the 49 cents gives us what we have in the budget, still with that $382,000 surplus. Anything over 49 cents would just continue to add to the surplus we already have in the budget. Now, playing devil's advocate, the reason why you may not agree with me and not want to do 49 cents is, one, there's been some talk about it's difficult to raise the tax rate later. But what we're doing is we're playing with the debt service tax rate and we're reducing that. There is no cap on how much you can increase the debt service tax rate. So in a couple of years, if we want to jack up the rate, we can in the debt service fund. There's no commitment there. You also have the 3.5% you can use in the general fund. So there's an easier way to increase the tax in the future by reducing that debt service tax rate. You might also be afraid that somebody who's frozen would go below their frozen value and set a new frozen value. And so on page 2, I have, I guess, Mr. Mayor on here on the bottom.
I noticed that.
So
That's general knowledge.
In order for the tax to go below his frozen tax, we would have to be below 48 cents on the tax rate. So even at 49 cents, he would still be paying more than his frozen value. And I assume most properties are the same because everybody continues to go up this 10%. The last thing I would say, and then I'll yield to my fellow council members, is on the last page of your packet of fund is a history of the general fund. And to answer Councilmember Buck's question about how much we had in fund balance. And I know we can argue about what that number is, or if there's some things that are restricted and some things that aren't restricted, or how restricted are they, but I'm being a little bit generous. The end of 2022, we had about 13.2 months. And Ms. Green is exactly accurate. As our costs go up, that means you got to have more to meet that level. So if you look at the bottom, there's the months in fund balance for the 2022, which is the actual that we have.
What page is this on now?
The last
Very
page.
last page.
You're at 13.2 million, which was in excess of about 1.4 million in fund balance. But over the next 2 years, because our costs are going up so exponentially, we would be short at the end of 2024 if everything happens the way it's budgeted. But what I want to point out is, if you look at the spending over the last 7 years, so from 2018, it kind of like 2/3 down, the total current expenditures for the general fund were 11.3 million. Then they went to 11.8, then 13, and they dipped a little bit to 12.3 million, Then for 2022, the last year we have official numbers, it was 13.7. But the 2023 budget was 15.9, and then the 2024 budget is 16.8. So if we can adopt 49 cents, which gives the city the ability to spend this 16.8, which is much more than we've ever done before, and still have a surplus, I think it's the tax rate that we should pay. Thank you.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Yes, ma'am.
Just really quickly about the INS. You're correct that if we were to reduce it or use the fund balance for it, that we can raise it to whatever we want to. But keep in mind that when you raise it to whatever you want to, it's gonna affect the overall tax rate. So say you had 40 cents for this fiscal year and you had 10 cents for your debt service. And the next year you needed 15 cents for your debt service. You're gonna increase to 55 cents next fiscal year overall.
Correct.
I'm so sorry. And I just wanted to be sure that you were aware of that.
Yeah, and my concern with saying that was if we adopt 49 cents, people may be worried we can't go up.
Yeah.
You're touching that point that you can, that
No,
we
you-
have that ability to go back up because of the INS side of it,
Yes, sir, you do.
that we're not gonna be stuck
But
at 49
just-
forever.
But at some point, it could very well hinder future councils. So just keep that in mind when you're considering your vote, that yes, right now it sounds great, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, for future councils or future residents, it could end up being worse than it actually needs to be. But you're correct. We absolutely can do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we do have a motion and a second, but we do have plenty of time for discussion. Yes, Mr. Buck and then Mr. Billsby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that's not in here for the screen is the sales tax revenue. Because as I know, we don't set our sales tax rate. I'm sorry, that's not what I was getting at. But rather the revenue that is going to be brought in to the city that would provide for the general fund. So for instance, that 1% sales tax that goes straight into the general fund, the half-cent sales tax for the venue tax, and the half-cent for the EDC. I'm assuming that the budgeted revenue and the tax rate that you're proposing, the proposed tax rates here take into account the sales tax revenue that would come in,
Yes, sir.
and this makes up the difference.
Yes.
What sales tax revenues are you currently projecting?
We're projecting it to be 19% of the budget for revenues.
Sorry, I was looking at hard numbers.
Oh, hard numbers, bear with me just a second.
Because if I remember correctly, in my looking at the venue tax, it's about
It's going to be,
1.7.
for the general fund, $3.5 million is projected.
So that's about, okay, so that's about the same as what I was looking at. I was looking at the venue tax is 1.75, so
Yeah, exactly.
3.55.
So approximately 7 million total.
7 million total from sales tax revenue. The budget revenue.
Half of that going to the general fund.
Half of that going to the general
Exactly.
fund. But the half-cent sales tax that goes to the EDC, is that included in our budget here?
No, sir.
Okay, so the city only gets essentially 1.5 cents of sales tax, 1 cent for the general revenue and half cent for the venue tax. And
Exactly.
those are incorporated in here. I mean, not incorporated in here, but they're taken into account.
Well, no, sir. The general fund is going to get 3.5. The venue fund will get the other portion,
Yes, ma'am.
which can be used for items that are discussed or decided by council.
But we've allocated within your budget where those funds are going to go. So essentially you are correct. It's wrapped up in your budget.
Yes.
The accounting for it and the expense for it.
And then what we're doing here by setting this tax rate is to make up the difference between our projected budget and the amount of money that was brought in via the sales tax.
And permits and fees and things of that nature.
So you said that we were going to bring in about 15 million in sales tax between the general fund and
No.
I'm sorry, not 15 million, 5 million.
5
Point,
million between
about 5 million between the general fund and what did you say the total
Venue
budget? And the venue tax was about 1.7, the general is about 3.55.
Exactly.
So what did you say was our total operating budget for the year for fiscal year 2023?
The total operating budget
It would be covered by the sales tax and the property tax.
That would be covered by all the revenue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 18,724,380 approximately.
Okay, so then we also get the various franchise fees and all of that stuff.
Yes, that's all included.
That red number up there of 92,000 represents the difference between what we budgeted and how short we would be if we adopt, how much we would miss that target if we adopted that rate.
If you adopt that rate, yes, sir, it would be approximately $92,000 less if we don't use fund balance for the debt service.
But to Councilmember Vaughn's point, if we do use the funds from the debt service,
Yes, sir.
we could potentially go down to 49. Please.
That would be a council decision.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
just please keep in mind, we do have other expenses that are not recorded in the budget because we tried to cut back enough to meet what we thought was going to be the revenue for the ad valorem. Originally, when we looked at the ad valorem budget, or the budget, the expenses or the revenue that was being projected for the general fund was $8.5 million. But what had actually come in would have been 8.1 because my predecessor, when she sent the information to the tax assessor's office, the rates that were presented there were different than what were put in our budget, which gave us a shortfall of almost $500,000. So staff got together and we cut back our budget as much as we could as far as items that we were trying to get in order to cover that. So now that we have a little bit of surplus, it would be a little more advantageous of us to say, okay, we have this $300 and something thousand, we should try to get the roof fixed. And so it really is gonna be, it's a balancing game, and there are items that have to be fixed that we didn't put into the budget because we didn't realize that we may have that revenue until after we further researched it and figured out exactly what had happened with the prior taxes. So right now, as Councilmember Vaughn says, we have $1.5 million approximately at the end of this fiscal year in debt service funds. So if you adopt, whatever rate you adopt, we'll have to adjust to, obviously. Just please consider that there are items that will be affected. Future council, persons that don't qualify for those exemptions will be the ones that are hardest hit. And any excess money can be placed somewhere and used somewhere.
So you say it could potentially hurt future councils.
Well,
Is that because we would not be able to raise our rates sufficiently in order to cover our debts? Because I see here that the voter approval rate is 0.65.
the voter approval rate has a non-used increment that will eventually begin to roll off. So it will no longer be available after a certain period of time.
We'll have a voter approval rate
It will
in excess
just-
of those unused increments. It will just be lower than the 0.65.
Exactly, yes.
So if we're talking about 0.50 right now, and the voter approval, we could go 15 cents higher than the lowest rate that you proposed right there. If we were to go down by 1 cent, would that number go down to 64 cents for next year?
No. The no new revenue increment it rolls off after a certain period.
Sorry, no, the voter approval rate.
Forgive me, oh, yes, sir. Yes. Well, but that includes the, that includes the unused increment. So if that rolls off, then that will just start reducing either by a penny or a penny and a half or 2 pennies or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's about what I was figuring. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Goolsbee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councilmember Buck kind of brought it up as far as hampering future councils, and it's been said, and then Councilmember Vaughn said that you talked about it. I'm going to ask that here in a little while you repeat it, because I'm hoping to understand that, because when I first got on council, we fought for years to get a budget that could provide the amenities. We've been doing lots of ribbon cuttings on things, and every time my wife turns around and says, why didn't we have this park when our kids were little? Well, there wasn't the budget for it. We're at that point now, and I would really hate to cut us deeply to where we no longer have that ability, but, you know, or going forward, we hamstring ourselves. So that's always my fear is that we do that and then, oh my gosh, we've got to raise taxes again year after. So I'm going to ask that here in a little while, Councilmember Vaughn be given the opportunity to explain that, or if I give up my seat or my time right now, because that's the part that I'm really trying to understand, because I hated it for 6 years, increasing. And then after that, I said, this is my last year, and we haven't seen that rate go up, even though property values did, but I've been happy with not seeing the rate go up. But I would hate to cut it down to 0.49, ouch, going forward. Unless Councilmember Vaughn can explain it fantastically. And as Councilmember Bowman will tell you, tonight I'm having a hard time seeing where my lines are, so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Let's somebody else talk, Paul.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Councilman Goldsby on that. I believe it puts a lot of pressure on future councils as well, where we get to a point where a future council, where maybe none of us are a part of, has to adjust things in a large amount that really makes things look pretty bad, because we save a few cents, and I'm just using a few cents as a way of communicating the fact of not having a shortfall. And also with the 65 and over, we do with the 4.9, I mean, it's going to be staying at, no?
No, sir. It doesn't stay at 4.9. They stay at whatever froze at, or whatever the ceiling was. So if their ceiling was 50.54, it'll stay 5.4. But it can go down, but they'll never go above the 5.4.
So, let me explain it to you. People get this very confused. So the value, if you're 65 and over or disabled, you have a tax ceiling. I know we call it a freeze. It's really a tax ceiling. So let's just say that when you got froze, your tax ceiling was $1,000, right? That's the most you're ever going to pay to the city of Universal City. Whether your valuation goes up, doesn't matter. Whether the tax rate goes up, doesn't matter. You're at $1,000. If the value of your house goes down and the tax rate goes down enough to lower your valuation to 900, then you're at 900. But then when a future city council comes and they want to issue more debt or do whatever else they need to do, if they set a tax rate where if you're 65 and over and disabled, you would have been paying $1,100, you won't be. You'll be back at your $1,000. You will never go higher than your $1,000. You can go lower, but you will never go higher. And that's, I think, what the discussion is on future city councils is, what's it going to do for them making that decision when they have to go higher or need to go higher or whatever that happens to be, that if it has to go to $1,100, the 65 and over and disabled aren't going to be affected by that. It's going to be the under 65 and the commercial properties.
And that was my point. You can go lower, but you'll never go higher.
Correct.
Once it's locked in.
But even if you go lower, it doesn't mean that you're frozen there. That's where people get a little bit confused also.
To me, that, and you know, I understand that. I'm 62 now, you know, I'm 3 years away from that myself. But as time goes by, I also, it's nice to get a break and everything, but I do believe that puts more of a burden that we just assume that a younger population can suck up, which I think that's a wrong assumption. So, yeah, unless Councilman Vaughn, like Councilman Gold said, really explain that, then I would like to hear him again as well. So.
Let me add a couple of things before we go back to Mr. Vaughn. I have been here a long time. I think you all know that. There was a period of time where I think it was at least 3 and maybe 4 consecutive years that we went absolutely to the voter approval rate because our rate was so low, the city could not perform its duties, really.
But that rate was 7.99%.
Right. So that's, in
Not
those
the
days, we were
3.5 that we have now,
7.99%.
yeah.
The state narrowed that down. So I would tell you, there was a very tough decision that this council made to go to that rate. But we were able to start providing the services that people really needed. Like Mr. Goldby said, you know, we could, why didn't we have all these parks back then? Well, we didn't have the budget for it. So I just want you to take that into consideration. I have been looking at the proposed rates for some of our sister cities. And I can tell you that everyone I've looked at so far is proposing that they go above the no new revenue rate for their next fiscal year. So that's just, I'm just throwing that out to you. We've got to be careful. I love the idea of not being able to raise revenue or the funding, excuse me, for the taxes for people. But we have to be forward-looking, honestly, do that. And I'd personally like to see us maybe do a compromise between the de minimis and the no new revenue. I think if we keep it, we'll still, whatever we do, even 0.49, I think that's too low. I would like to see it at least maybe 5.10, but that's just my personal thought. So we'll leave it at that and we'll press on from there. We'll get you, Bowman and Christina.
You know, I've sat out in this audience for a year and now I'm up here and I feel like year after year after year, like all you guys ever talk about and all the city is really talking about is how much we want businesses here and how much, you know, we want to develop businesses and how important our businesses is and how we need to spend all this money to bring businesses here and buy land, and like it has been nothing but business, 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 business. And Gather Brewery has been touted as, you know, this amazing, wonderful thing for the community, and it is, but you're looking at their evaluations and you're saying you want to pay, you guys want to do 52 cents and you're saying you're just okay with them paying a 65% increase on their taxes, or even smaller like Bellicera who just got here. You're saying you want them to pay a 43% extra for taxes. That to me, you're never gonna get businesses here. I mean, it's not fair. It doesn't make logical sense to me. I can't even imagine having to pay that when you could easily pay, you know, go from 43% to 35%. And then same thing with homeowners, you're talking 16%, because we all went up 10%. So you're talking 16% on the homeowners at 52 cents. I don't know how you reconcile that we have to have all these businesses. We're gonna invest millions of dollars on buying property, but then we're gonna tax them out the nose and hope that they still keep coming. It seems like we're doing things backwards. I mean, it's not logically clicking in my brain how we're fighting for one thing, but then we're doing another when we approve a tax rate. So I'm gonna stick with that 49 cents.
Okay. Anything else, ma'am?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. I get concerned when we talk about that we had to come up with $500,000 this year and we had to make extra cuts because we came in after the fact and discovered we didn't have the money we thought we did. And then to ask everybody to make all of these huge cuts. Yes, I want to keep our homeowners in our minds and our businesses in our minds. But I also think we need to think about what does our city need to operate effectively and to serve the citizens, and so that we have public services, we have the fire, we have the police, we have all of those things. I think cutting it to 49 is too much. I think it's too aggressive. I know that the city recommended the de minimis. I'm probably not saying that right, but de minimis. But kind of am coming down where the mayor is maybe a compromise between the no noon revenue and that other rate. I just think we would be too aggressive in going down 49 to that 49-cent rate when we haven't really had a chance to think through those decisions and how it's going to affect. I know we have operating funds. I know we have things that we can pull from, but I also know, I'm guessing we did not budget for 3 air conditioners in 3 of our buildings this year that I know went out.
One of them we did.
Okay, so one out of 3
One of them was budgeted, one,
did.
the others were not.
And talking about the maintenance that we need, if we need a new roof, what happens if we don't replace it? What's going to be the long-term impact of making those cuts and not getting that work done when we should be? I just think that it's too much. And that's where, but if, as Councilmember Goolsby said, if you can help it make sense to me in my mind that we would be okay, maybe, but I think it's too much to consider going to that rate.
Phil, do you want to add something?
Sure. So just to answer Mr. Goolsby's question, so the tax rate is broken into 2 pieces. So a piece that goes to your general fund and a piece that goes to the debt service fund to pay debt. And the rule on what you can increase, where the cap is the general fund side, you can only go 3.5%. So let's just use easy math. If we did the 49, let's just say it's 40 cents for general fund and 9 cents for debt. Well, that 40 cents is limited to 3.5. But the 9 cents on the INS is not limited, it can go up. And so there's ways that you can offset future increases. So if you said next year we're in a world of hurt and we need to go up, you can increase it on the INS side and work a little bit in between that in terms of how much money is coming in. But there is still a cap on the general fund side. It's the 3.5%. And depending on how we split the rate, so we said 49 cents, but we want to use more of the debt service this year, we can keep the general fund side stays high. So it's 49 cents, but then we can play games in terms of how much of that's going to be for general fund and how much it's going to be for debt. So you can keep the general fund high, keep the debt low, and then you can slowly switch it over time if you need to. We have 3 years of high debt service that we need to get over, and the fund balance that's in debt service, if you use 300 a year, would get us over that hump, and then we have a cliff of the debt after that, which I know we have plans to issue more debt for the streets, so that would be tacked on the back end. But by then, we're going to have all these apartments that we approved, Civil Crossing is going to be in, and we're going to have more development coming in paying for some of that revenue. I also just want to point out that we're not cutting anything. So the rate's going down, but we're not reducing the total amount of revenue that we're getting. We're really getting about the same amount that we got for 2022. And the property taxes for the general fund only cover about half of our budget. The rest of the budget is covered by all of the other revenues that come in. So minor tweaks to the property tax rate really aren't driving the overall budget. And I'll just say it again, that assuming that we don't raise the revenue from where it's in the budget right now, it still allows the city to spend a historic amount of money. Like $16.8 million is what's in the budget just for operations. We're not talking about capital items. We're not talking about trucks or anything. That's 16 million of salaries and nuts and bolts that we've never spent before. So we're not cutting to the bone or anything. I agree that it takes out a lot of the wiggle room in the tax rate, which I think is good for our taxpayers. I don't think we need to add extra wiggle room just to have extra wiggle room. But perhaps there's a compromise there. I just think you have to think about, why am I going to increase taxes on people if we don't need it in the budget? And if you are, then I think you should have a good reason for it to say we need to increase taxes because X, Y, Z. Rather than just, we're a little nervous about what's going to happen in the future, and so let's just add more money in the kitty and hope that something happens.
Councilmember Rob, that's not what we're doing.
Well, why would
You're right about the INS, and you're right about the M&O. However, if you have 40 cents for your M&O, and then you have 9 cents for your INS, like I said before, if you increase your INS, it's still gonna increase the taxes, the bottom line.
Correct. And my point is
still going to, I'm sorry. It's still going to affect the taxpayer. So
100%.
I think that council should be able to come to a consensus of what's best. We recommended the de minimis rate, or at least no less than the de minimis rate, to cover additional costs.
If council doesn't agree to that, if they decide they want to go with 50 cents or 59 cents, that's great. But please consider that future councils will be affected, future potential citizens will be affected, and the businesses will also be affected negatively, even more negatively than you would anticipate right now.
So your argument is impact them now, so we don't have to.
No, sir, I'm not saying,
impact them
no,
as bad.
sir, that's not what I said. I did not say impact them now. I said whatever council chooses, the staff will go ahead and figure out what we need to do in order to cover what we have to cover. But please consider that future councils will be affected by it, future citizens will be affected by it. And I'm not saying that you have to do the voter approval rate, because that's outrageous. We know that's outrageous. And as I mentioned, we can use fund balance for the debt service for this year. Just don't cut it so low that it causes us to have to jump through hoops to be sure that we can cover everything we have to cover. And then next year, possibly raise rates. That's all. Just consider everything before you decide that you want to go as low as 49. I'm not saying you couldn't cover it. We absolutely could try to work that out. But it kind of hamstrings future council is all.
I disagree. We'll have to disagree on that.
Okay, well.
All of the
Be the
other
first
numbers
thing.
would be adding to this surplus. So if we have things that are emergencies and we need to do a roof, we can talk about that, but that's not in the budget right now. But if we want to put it in the budget, that's a discussion we can have. But right now, it's not in the budget. We don't need it for the budget, and that's just where I'm at. So, anyway.
I would
Excuse me,
remind
you had a
council
comment?
that when you do your personal budgets, that you probably, and again, a lot of people manage, I always say the department heads, I know what their personal budget looks like by the way they handle their city department budget, and people do handle it differently. There are some, though, that are very conservative in their spending and in their budgeting, and then there's who are more liberal in their budgeting and spending, and there is a balance that has to happen between all of those. And so philosophically, you have to understand that if you lower the tax rate, it is a benefit to the residents and the businesses. But if you provide for a tax rate that has funding to do additional projects or capital purchases or an events, those are for a benefit for the community as a whole as well. So I don't think that we should get caught into the fact that just lowering the tax rate is good for everyone, or just having excess revenue is good for everyone. They're both good for everyone, because whatever service or whatever capital improvement gets done with the revenue is for the benefit of the city overall. Now, granted, a resident may say, really, a city hall roof, how does that benefit me? Well, it benefits you by being able to come here and not sit in a roof like we have done before, where it's leaking and all the ceiling tiles are brown and it's, you know, it's embarrassing and all those other things. So I would hope that philosophically you can understand that both of those are good for the residents and the businesses.
Okay, Mr. Buck, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I do. In looking at your pie chart, 54% of our residents have no exemptions.
Currently.
No, and does that include no homestead exemption also?
No, sir. They would most probably have a homestead exemption.
Okay, so most of the single-family homes that are owner-occupied most likely have
Exactly.
the homestead exemption. So the red and the green categories, that's only the folks that have the tax ceiling for being over 65, and that increased by 1%. No, I'm sorry, that one increased by 1%. The number of our disabled veterans did not increase.
Right.
So we're really I'm confused on the no new revenue rate. Because if our no new revenue rate, and have you had a chance to look over Councilmember Vaughn's numbers in this packet that he's put here?
A brief chance, yes, sir.
Do you generally agree with them that they are accurate? And I'm not trying, I'm just trying to set the standard here upon which we can have this discussion. That Gather, that for example, to use the example, that Gather Brewery went from 411,000 to 702,000 of valuation.
That information I could not speak to, sir.
Okay. Let's assume the council, for argument's sake in the discussion, let's say that those numbers are correct. When I see that Gather Brewing Company's taxes will increase this year at our no new revenue rate by 55%. Was that correct? Sorry, 59%. The Triangle Shopping Center is gonna increase by 38%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have to question, where did, and we have a lot more properties on our rolls this year. Cibolo Crossing, the areas across 1518, I forget what the name of that one is.
Orchard Park.
Orchard Park, thank you. The other businesses that have opened here. How is it that everybody's taxes are going up that much?
If you look, sir, it's $1,000. It's $900.
Yeah, so, I know that we're looking at
But again,
it's easy to use the
can't speak
percentage.
to these numbers. I don't know. This is the first I've seen of them. I haven't had a chance to really research them to determine whether or not that, I have no doubt they're most probably accurate, but I don't have a way to confirm it.
Because the logical question that I would ask is similar to the one that I had last year. If on both sides of the equal sign have to be equal, right, have to be the same. We're gonna bring in the exact same amount. If X number of properties values and their taxes are going up, there would have to be a similar number that are going down to offset that. So I guess you don't know, and
The value went up, so the tax rate is going down. That's why it's going down from 5.4 to 0.502. That's your equal right there.
But in order for us to bring exactly what we brought in last year, let's say it's $10 million, okay? The amount of tax, so that this side of the equal sign is $10 million. Exactly what we brought in last year. The numbers over here, the rates, the amount of money paid by all of those entities, if some of them are going up, some of them have to go down in order to bring in $10 million.
The valuation went up, the tax rate went down. Valuation times the lower tax rate equals 10 million.
Except that all of these, in real numbers, I'm not talking percentages anymore. If Gather Brewing is going to pay, instead of paying $2,220, they're gonna pay $3,526. That's the most extreme value that we have on here. In real numbers, 10 million on one side, not percentages, not tax rates, in real numbers. On the left side of the equal sign is $10 million. On the right side also has to equal $10 million. So if Gather Brewing is paying an additional $1,300 in taxes at our new revenue rate.
I don't see 1,000. I see less than $100 increase.
Okay, so if you look at their 2022 tax on the far left side, under Gather Brewing, it says their 2022 valuation and their 2022 tax. Their 2022 tax was $2,220.
Because their valuation didn't change.
But their valuation did change. So what I'm talking about is the amount of money that they paid in 2022
Yes.
is $2,220. Now slide over to the column under the no new revenue rate. The tax at that example rate is $3,526. You see that?
Okay, in 2022, their value was $400,000.
I'm not talking about valuations.
Hold on, but that's what runs the tax, that's what runs the amount of revenue that you get, is the value of the value of the property. The property value was $411,000. It's almost doubled in value.
Yes, ma'am.
So yes, it's gonna be up a little bit. I guess I feel bad, I honestly cannot speak to any of these numbers to be sure that they're correct.
Yeah.
And so unless you wanna give me time to go back and check to see what they are.
Well, not that the numbers are correct or not. In just real numbers, not valuations, not rates. If Gather Brewing Company paid $2,000 last year.
Yes.
And they're gonna have to pay $3,000 this year. Not talking about the rates, just the real numbers. We're gonna bring in the same amount of money that we brought in last year, which was $10 million. If Gather Brewing is paying $1,000 more this year than they did last year, somewhere that $1,000 is being paid less.
And it could be included in the 65 and older. Even though it says 1%, 1% of 7,000 properties is 700 properties.
Yeah, every single one of these properties on Councilmember Vaughn's examples, and I don't know if, maybe he cherry picked, I don't know. to only find the ones that were gonna go up. I don't, I'm not saying that you did, but maybe he did. Every single one of these properties in here is paying more than they did last year. So there has to be,
If the numbers are correct, yes.
assuming the numbers are correct.
The only thing the only logical explanation would be possibly the 65 and older ceiling are paying a little bit less, or because they are at a ceiling, they're not being affected, but everybody else is.
They're gonna pay the same.
Yes. I don't honestly have an explanation because I've just seen the numbers.
Yeah,
But you understand,
because their property values didn't go up, yeah.
Their property values went up, but as you said, the
They didn't get taxed at that, so.
correct, but their tax ceiling is still gonna pay the same. So anybody in Universal City who's 65 or over and owns their house is gonna pay exactly the same amount that they did last year. So,
Not necessarily.
so there might be more over 65 properties that are now on the rolls. You did point out that it went from 31% to 32%. So 1% of our properties.
Which I think residential is 5,000 properties approximately. So
Total five, we have total 5,000 properties in Universal? No.
Residential.
Residential properties. So 1% would be what, 50?
500? I mean, it'll be 55.
You're the accountant. I'm doing better math than you.
I have literally
Sorry.
been up since 3 o'clock this morning getting kids ready for school.
Okay.
So.
And we need to settle on a rate here, and I apologize that I'm trying to take
No problem, I fully understand. And
I understand how the numbers work.
Mhm.
I'm trying to understand, again, potentially whether Bear County has given us.
They have,
The numbers are accurate from Bear County.
and Guadalupe.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that wasn't included was the freeze properties for the freeze properties for Guadalupe County. But there were only approximately 12 properties that would have been affected. So it wasn't worth the effort to try to have them added this year. And then next year, Bear County is going to be better about getting the information to Guadalupe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Mr. Goolsbee?
So I'm going to ask this question on the, how does this work? We've got a motion and a second at 0.49. If that's voted on and not approved, can we make another motion, or is that item dead?
You have to come to a decision tonight.
I'm just making sure that's how.
As in, you have
Where
to
till we
have
make
a
a decision?
majority vote on some rate.
I'm just trying to figure out if it was a negotiation with Councilmember Vaughn on this on this 0.49, or if it's a no vote and then throw something else out. That's all I was looking for.
Okay.
So I was prepared to go 0.52. You've got great numbers here, and I appreciate that. I'm going to throw out that we meet in the middle.
What number do you want for the middle?
Well,
Because he's got several in the city, yes. They're kind of different.
okay, he's got 0.49 and 0.52, so it'd be 0.505.
Okay, remember, we did this last
I know,
year and how much trouble it got it. Can we use numbers that are already calculated?
So 0.517, I was trying to be.
All right, so I think we need to take a look at the first motion that's been made and vote on it and find out where we stand, and we'll press on from there. Any other discussion by anybody? All right. The proposal is the 0.49 and the second at 0.49. So let's call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Aye.
Councilmember Bowman,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsbee,
No.
Councilmember Buck,
No.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick,
No.
Councilmember Najarian,
No.
The motion is defeated then 4-2. So we can open up the floor again for another motion on a particular rate.
I make a motion that we set it at the de minimis rate that's shown here at 0.517, 499.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. More discussion? Bill?
I just want to make sure that before we vote on this, that means all homeowners are going up more than 5%. They're not
I'm gonna
frozen.
take a minute to look at those numbers.
And that it's going to generate 464,000 extra on top of what we already have in the general fund. So that's going to be 840-ish thousand extra in the general fund for, we'll just blow it on something. So that's the plan.
That's if you use,
Thank you.
that's if you use if we use fund balance.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Long?
Yeah, that's a 5.6%, so add the other 10 from homeowners, so you're talking 15.6%. There's no way I'm gonna agree to that.
You can't calculate it that way.
Mr. Buck?
I like Mr. Goolsby's suggestion of meeting in the middle at 505.
It's not up there.
I know.
Nobody's calculated it.
Right now, it's proposed at the 5.517499.
Well, so it's higher than the no new revenue. It's lower than the de minimis, and it will still cover our expenses. And we would have that balanced budget.
All right, that's another position there. We do have the motion though, and we do need a second. If there's no more discussion on this one, we'll call for the vote then, please. Yes, Ms.
I was just going to say, I do feel we need to take into consideration what the city is recommending, that they feel like that they need for us to give them the ability to conduct the business as they see fit. They are the experts in this. We definitely are setting the budget and approving that, but we're doing based on the recommendation of experts in operating our city. And they've come to us and said, this is the amount that we feel like is the best one to approve for us to conduct business for your community. And I think that needs to weigh heavily in our consideration.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's go ahead and call for that vote, please. Maribel?
For 0.517,499, Councilmember Najarian,
Aye.
Councilmember Fitzpatrick,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Goolsby,
Aye.
Councilmember Buck,
No.
Councilmember Bowman,
No.
Councilmember Vaughn,
No.
Mayor Williams.
That's a tie 3-3. I will vote yes. Okay, that's it.
So just so you understand, we will get this posted in the paper. We will be back on September 5th. Is that the date? 5th date. We'll do another public hearing on the budget and a second vote on the tax rate.
Okay. That concludes our business for this evening. Turn over to the city manager for her comments.
Give me 1 second. I had a Post-it note here. Okay. Just one item. So we had the discussion on the council procedures, and people were going to be sending me red lines. I've only received red lines from 2 people. And so if you have comments and you want those on the September 5th for consideration, you need to get those emailed to me. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Oh, you have this evening? Okay.
That's everything. Yes, we've been here long enough.
All right, so I've gotten a lot of emails and a lot of concerns from residents. So unfortunately, it seems like we've had a lot of water main breaks lately. One issue I've heard time and time again from residents is why are we not being notified when they turn off our water? Do we not have a notification system that we can use? I ask because when you have an older home and you lose water, you need to run all the water in your sinks and tubs because they get these air pockets. And if we don't know that we don't have water, it makes it really hard to know that you need to now go and let out the water in all of your sinks and pipes. I know that, like, yes, there was a post on Facebook, but by then I had already had water and it wasn't helpful. But I know there has to be a better system because I'm not the only homeowner and there's been several that so I'm just asking if there's some way we can bring up this situation and see if we can come up with some solutions that if you're gonna turn off our waters because of a water main break, you send out an email blast that says, hey, if you're affected, you know, we're having a water main break on Pat Booker and you might not have water for the next couple hours. I did call and other residents did call, but I just think there's an easier way, especially if it's closed, if it happens at 10 o'clock at night. There's no email blast or person to call if you lose water.
So we have two notification systems. One is you can sign up for any time an emergency alert happens on our website, and you automatically get the email or the phone call, depending on which you choose. We also have our reverse 911 system, which we constantly hound people to put in their phone number and email address, and we can geocode that and it will go out to you. The problem is a lot of people have gotten rid of their landlines. They haven't updated their information on the reverse 911 for texting, email. So we have it. People just have to give us their information.
I'm on both and I didn't get anything about the one that broke on Pat Booker. And same thing with other residents. They're on the CPS text emails.
On the big break you're speaking of, our phones were flooded. There was no way to get information out. From dispatch to here to our office. While staff was out with 3 main breaks dealing with it, we were able to get Regina to put it out there. That's all we had time for because our staff couldn't even get a number. That phone was ringing off. There was no way to get a call out to anybody.
Well, I just know like there's been 3 breaks and then another one that that water got shut off at 10 o'clock at night and same thing like.
They notify, if it's a single block, they go door to door. And that's the best way to notify, door to door. That's what they do.
And if that's not happening, let's play devil's advocate and say that's not happening, who would they call?
They call after hours, it goes to dispatch. Then it goes to our standby.
Okay.
And so then we make contact with each individual that calls.
Okay. That's it, thank you.
One last thing on that, Councilwoman Bowman. So this time of year, we always get main breaks. They do happen because everything's dry. And so everything starts contracting and shifting. We will get, when we do get rain, if we get a plethora of rain, we're gonna get more shifting and we're gonna get main breaks. So it is part of the natural expand and contract of the land that is creating that. But yeah, we will try to get that information out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's just
of course,
hard.
they never happen at convenient times, right? It's gonna happen at 3 o'clock in the morning when all the public crews are gonna get called in the middle of the night. And I can tell you the last thing they're thinking about is, oh, let's notify people. All they're thinking about is what equipment do we need and how fast can we get it there? So.
I just worry, like I have old pipes and I have to run them. I've noticed some serious issues every time I've lost water. And I know other people in Coronado, when they lost water, they had serious house issues. Like it's bad. And like I said, you're also not supposed to like boil notices and things like that. Like if you're skeptical and worried about water, like it gives you the option to do that. If you knew that pipes were turned off and water sat and you wanted to, it's just a safety precaution. But, all right, that's it. Thank you.
Phil?
I'm concerned about Orchard Park and our ETJ across 1518. I understand that our cost estimates for the low water crossing came back higher than we anticipated. And I wonder if this is in the best interest of those residents across the creek to be serviced by us. And I also think that this is potentially complicating our elections. And I think that I'd like to ask my other council members if we can add it to the next agenda to discuss whether it makes sense for our city limits to extend across 1518 for these residents, where it would be better served by another neighboring community that can provide it at a better service rate. And that even if we do this low water crossing, it's not going to be accessible during a storm. And I just think we're doing them a disservice by not being able to provide good services over on that side of town. It doesn't make sense for us, I don't think. So I'm asking if there's a consensus to put that on an agenda item to reconsider this.
Well, what do you think? For, at least for an item for discussion about that?
On the discussion.
All right, we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Christina?
I don't have anything to.
I'm sorry, can I get a point of clarification? Are we discussing the low water crossing, or are we discussing de-annexation of Orchard Park and the rest of the property in the ETJ? Because those are two separate subjects.
Yeah, it's the pros and cons of having our city limits extend across the creek and whether or not that makes sense for us as a community and for them as
Okay.
residents, and what our options would be if we
So it's
decide.
basically the discussion that we had when they petitioned to be annexed. Because remember, we didn't go out to annex them, they petitioned to be annexed. That's something different.
Correct, but our ETJ was already there, correct?
It was already there. We had no intention of de-annexing them. They petitioned us to annex them.
Correct. I sure.
So we'll have to figure out what the legalities of that are since they made the petition to us. Well, we know the disbenefits to the homeowners is that they fall under the county services. Okay.
City limits right now.
Yes.
We will definitely have some legal questions with that, so we'll look at that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick item. Thank you all for being here and putting up with us as council trying to do what we can to better the city and keep things running, and appreciate all your participation always. Just was at the Northeast Partnership meeting this last Thursday. Representative Harry Cuellar was our guest speaker, and just was letting us know that he's a middle of the road man, and there is money for this area. He treasures this area and the base, and there's money, just looking for some direction where to put that money and how to best use it from some people on the base. But so kind of stay tuned for that. But it was a very good discussion on that. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Report time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all. I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Buck?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to point out that the business of running this city is a messy business. Okay? The folks that are sitting up here in front of you are all unpaid volunteers. They're doing this essentially out of the goodness of their heart and for the residents of this community. So everybody's exasperation and their gasps and their comments about how ridiculous this is are poorly taken. They are not well taken. We are up here trying to do the best that we can for the residents of this community. And like I said, it's a messy job. The city staff has worked on this budget and on these proposals and all of the tax rate proposals for at least a week, probably 2 weeks. They've been working on the budget for 6 months now, asking us to come up here and make the decision on a tax rate and what's best for the residents of Universal City to get our city to function, and asking us to do it in about 2 hours. And you're exasperated that it's taken us this long to do it? Sorry for taking up your time. That's all I got, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, everyone. This is obviously a tough decision, and I made it based on the fact that I think there is a compromised position that we need to take into consideration, and I really appreciate everybody's comments and candidness about how they felt about this issue, and it's just something that we have to deal with, and we are not paid, and we try to do the best things for our city, and we don't necessarily always agree on it. I think we've proven that point very, very succinctly tonight as well. One just quick comment is that we had the ribbon cutting for the children's recreation area at the Veterans Park last Friday at the Playscape. And I don't know if you've been there since it's open, but if you take a look at a drone shot of that, as our pilots do every day, coming up, taking off and landing, the Playscape looks exactly like a fighter jet. It's pretty awesome. If you have not had a chance to see it, you really should. It's phenomenal. Oh, I'm sorry, Christina, I thought you said no comment.
I did say no comment.
Yeah, she,
I did.
no, yeah,
Yep.
okay, good.
You got me.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking it out tonight. Really appreciate it. It's a tough time of the year, and we all have to make sure that we get some good night's sleep tonight, we hope, especially Christine, especially. Okay? So thank you very much for coming and sticking it out. I really appreciate it. This meeting is adjourned now. It's 10:20.
That was fun.